Chapter 121, Wen Zhong revealed his plan before he even made a move.
Chen Yuting has been furiously retaliating against Lu Baoxiang and Li Yuzhen in recent times, and has never stopped investigating information about them. Of course, he also discovered that Li Yuzhen had gone to see her daughter in private. Chen Yuting had ignored her the previous few times, but the day before yesterday, he discovered that his two former granddaughters had actually been brought back to the Lu family by Li Yuzhen. After some investigation, it was discovered that Chen Yuting had recently had close contact with a man. This was none of Chen Yuting's business. At most, he cursed in his heart, saying that like mother, like daughter. After learning the man's name, he felt that it was better to tell Wang Yu about it.
Xiaoyu, Uncle Chen actually knows a little about you. Chen Yuting felt a little embarrassed.
Since discovering that these women had started getting pregnant one after the other, he had made a great effort to investigate Wang Yu. The identities of Wen and Sun Qian were easy to find out, and seeing that Wang Yu had two women after getting married, Chen Yuting didn't care. After all, he had seen a lot of this kind of thing. He was only slightly surprised by Sun Qian's identity, and it wasn't until the investigator took a photo of Wen Xin and gave it to him that Chen Yuting's jaw dropped. Looking at the photo in his hands, Chen Yuting recalled more than 10 years ago, the woman who looked down on everyone in the shopping mall, and who had built a powerful business empire in just a few short years. In short, Wen Xin at that time was someone he looked up to, and Chen Yuting was also fortunate enough to meet her once at a business reception. When he learned that Wang Yu actually had an affair with this woman, Chen Yuting's heart was not just surprised, he saw a greater opportunity.
His own company has never been able to break out of Shudu City, isn't it because it doesn't have a powerful ally?
If he can gain the support of the Wen Group, then Chen Yuting is confident that he can double his assets in 5 years. After having 10 sons, this old man can be described as full of energy. He knew as soon as Wang Yu returned to Shudu City yesterday, so he asked him over this morning to get closer.
Uncle Chen, what is it about me? Wang Yu was a little curious.
Chen Yuting didn't know much about his own affairs, but definitely not a little.
Why was he investigating himself for no reason?
I discovered something when I was investigating Lu Baoxiang and Li Yuzhen, and I feel it will be useful to you. Chen Yuting didn't explain that he was investigating Wang Yu for the sake of his child, but instead explained that he had discovered that Chen Yuting's child had appeared in the Lu family, so he had casually investigated Chen Yuting. Then he discovered that she was close to a man.
Uncle Chen, so Wen Liang is going to be cheated on. Hearing this, Wang Yu couldn't help but interrupt.
There's no evidence for this, and the current investigation has also revealed nothing. Chen Yuting was also speechless. Although she wasn't his own daughter, after all, he had raised her. What Chen Yuting was doing now made him feel very embarrassed.
That's not the point. The point is that I found out the identity of the man, and I feel that he will do you harm. Which man? Who is he doing harm to? Wang Yu was a little stunned. The man's name was Wen Zhong, and he was from the Wen family in Kyoto. He was Wen Xin's cousin.
Chen Yuting had hired someone to secretly record the two men's conversation and analyze the information. Wen Zhong, Kyoto, cousin, these pieces of information, combined with Wen Xin's expressed dislike for Kyoto every time, made Wang Yu feel that this woman was hiding a lot of things from him. Some time ago, the identity of the chairman of the Wenshur group in Tiannan City made him feel that he would be eating soft food in the future.
Now it involves the Wen family in Kyoto. What other identities does this woman have?
I must interrogate her properly when I go there today.
Uncle Chen, I know about this matter. Thank you. If there's nothing else, I'll be going back first. Wang Yu was now a little restless.
This Wen Zhong had nothing to do in Shudu City, and getting entangled with Chen Yuting would undoubtedly cause harm to himself and Wen Xin. Leaving Chen Yuting's home, Wang Yu drove straight to the community where Wen Xin lived.
More than half an hour later, Wang Yu stood in the doorway, staring blankly.
Sun Qian and Yuan, who had said they were going to work this morning, were actually at Wen Xin's house. It looked like they had been here for quite some time, and Wen Hong, the only man in the house, had been sent to wash vegetables and cook. The two little girls, Wen Jia and Wen Wan, had been completely won over by Sun Qian. The 5 women were now sitting on the sofa watching TV, with some fruit and snacks on the coffee table.
Here they come. Seeing Wang Yu warmly greet Wen Xin, Sun Qian and Yuan pretended not to see it and didn't even turn their heads. Sister Wen, I have something I want to tell you alone.
It was obviously inappropriate to talk about this in front of the whole house, but as soon as Wang Yu spoke, all 5 women looked at him at the same time, their gazes full of distrust.
Let's talk here, don't even think about leaving me alone with you. Wen Xin would never fall for that.
After listening to Sun Qian and Wen's accounts this morning, she promised herself that she would never sleep alone with Wang Yu in the future. Wang Yu felt a little embarrassed by Wen Xian's rejection, and at that moment, he felt that there was nothing he couldn't say. Besides, his cousin was just here for a visit, and he had no intention of meeting Chen Yuting.
By the way, do you have a cousin named Wen Zhong?
Yes, he is.
He is the third son of my second uncle. How do you know?
He is in Shuzhou City, and he has been getting close to Chen Yuting recently.
Wang Yu directly told him what he knew. Your ex-wife? Sun Qian interrupted.
Wang Yu did not answer, glaring at her. When Jia and Wen saw that there was melon to eat, and their eyes sparkled as they looked at Sun Qian.
Holy cow! Sister Wen, your eldest son is going to be cheated on. Sun Qian's mind raced and she realized a major issue. Don't speak yet, let's hear what Xiaoyu has to say. When Xian interrupted Sun Qian, who was about to speak, and signaled Wang Yu to continue.
Wang Yu then told her everything Chen Shusheng had told him today, and after he finished, he carefully observed Wen Xian's expression.
That's it?
After listening, Sun Qian realized that the current information, apart from proving that Wen Liang was at risk of being cheated on, was nothing to be concerned about. Wang Yu spread his hands to indicate that there was nothing more. He felt that Wen Xian hated Kyoto so much that she would definitely have a big reaction when she heard that someone from the Wen family had come, but she was now acting very calmly.
I know the purpose of his visit.
He is here for me, and he is probably approaching Chen Yuting to investigate Xiaoyu.
Wen Xian's eyes darkened a little after she said this. How could she not know what her second uncle's sons were thinking?
When she was just starting out, her second uncle gave her some help, and Wen Xian remembered all of this. When the Wen Group was formally established, she directly gifted her second uncle's family 20% of the shares. Her second uncle refused at the time, but his sons
disagreed, saying that their family deserved it for their money and effort.
For this reason, her second uncle and his sons had a fight, and Wen Xian didn't want to make things difficult for her uncle, so she also persuaded them a bit, and then the 20% of the shares were divided up among her three cousins.
Chapter 122. Sun Qian and Wang Yu wanted to help Wen Liang.
She had thought that it would be settled like that and she would have no further relationship with them, but when she heard that Wen Zhong had come to Shuzhou City,
Wen Xian knew that these cousins obviously wanted to eat her out of house and home.
They regarded the Wen Group as their own. Not to mention that she now had biological offspring. Even if she remained single as before, she would not leave her Wen Group to those three ungrateful people.
Knowing what, why are you investigating me? Wang Yu asked curiously. Everyone's gaze turned to Wen Xian again.
They're eyeing my company, so it's normal to investigate my man.
Wen Xian shook her head helplessly and said.
Don't worry about this trivial matter, I'll let my third brother find someone to take care of him. Sun Qian patted her chest to promise, and a wave of turbulence made Wen Jia and Wen Wan look very envious.
No need, I'll handle this matter.
Saying this, Wen Xian stood up from the sofa and went to her bedroom to make some arrangements and precautions.
Xiaoyu, I have an idea. Seeing Wen leave, Sun Qian whispered to Wang Yu. What idea?
We can't help Wen Jie, but we can help Wen Liang.
Help him do what? I already respect the law by not killing him, and I still want to help him?
Wang Yu immediately refused upon hearing this. He wouldn't even give Wen Liang a second glance even if he died in front of him, let alone help him.
Don't worry, just listen to me.
Sun Qian pulled Wang Yu over excitedly and whispered in his ear for a while, leaving Wang Yu stunned.
What do you think?
Sun Qian asked, taking credit for herself. Well, Qian, you make a lot of sense, and I really feel like I should help him. Wang Yu gave Sun Qian a kiss on the cheek with a happy smile on his face.
Get away, there are two kids watching. Sun Qian gave Wang Yu a hard pinch on his waist. I can't help it, I can't help it. Wang Yu quickly begged for mercy. I'll let my third brother find someone to do it.
No need, I don't have much to do these days, so I'll just kill some time.
I want to see what my ex-wife really wants. How could Wang Yu let someone else do such an exciting thing?
He immediately rubbed his fists and was ready to do it himself.
That's fine, just go and have a look then. It's such a hot day, just rest at home.
If you really have nothing to do, when Han comes back, go help with the cooking. Sun Qian looked at Wang Yu's high spirits and immediately said with some displeasure. I should have known not to come, and I've been made into a cook again.
Wen Xian made a few phone calls and made some arrangements before coming out. Her control over the Wen Group is not something her useless cousins can understand. After a simple arrangement, a pit was dug.
Let's teach them a lesson, otherwise it's annoying to jump out and disgust yourself for no reason.
After leaving the room, Wen Xin did not see Wang Yu open her mouth and ask, "Where is Xiao Yu?" "Cooking in the kitchen," Yuan answered with a smile.
After hearing this, the women laughed out loud at the same time. In the kitchen, Wang Yu looked at the skillful Wen Hong and couldn't help but sigh a little. When did the status of men become like this? Thinking about just being with them, he didn't even need to pick up the food, and he lost his family status in just a few months, so he couldn't help but sigh. Then he buried his head and started washing the vegetables. As for stir-frying, forget it, his level of scrambled eggs is only good enough for breakfast, so Wang Yu very consciously handed over this technical task to Wen Hong. The two men were busy in the kitchen for more than an hour, and a table of sumptuous meals was ready. When Wen's body has been nourished very well, and now she no longer needs to take those medicinal herbs. Wen Wan, however, is expected to take them for a few more months. Her illness is too troublesome and will require a longer period of recuperation. The whole family here is having a great time, while at this moment, Chen Yuting and Wen Zhong are also eating together in an upscale restaurant. As for Wen Liang, after the two children were sent away by Chen Yuting in the name of her grandparents, he had to stay at home alone. Without Chen Yuting and her daughter by his side, Wen Liang did not feel lonely. He was thinking about what business to do in the future. There were some organized materials in the study, and Wen Liang was still working hard on the plan with the computer. In order to provide a better life for his wife and child in the future, what happened before has not affected Wen Liang's mood.
He now has some ideas that, if implemented, could make a fortune. Thinking about making money, Wen Liang is more and more motivated as he imagines Chen Yuting looking up to him in admiration. However, the hard-working Wen Daling doesn't know that at this moment, his beloved woman is dining with another man. "Yuting, are you sure Wen Xin is pregnant?"
Although Chen Yuting had told him about his cousin the other day, Wen Zhong still couldn't quite believe it. He knew exactly what kind of person Wen Xin was, and if she had a boyfriend, he would understand, and even if she had several boyfriends, Wen Zhong wouldn't be too surprised. But Chen Yuting said that his cousin and another woman had both followed the same man, and they were pregnant with each other's children. "Well, I saw it with my own eyes, and her belly was already showing, and she herself admitted it." Chen Yuting elegantly ate the exquisite food on her plate, looking very content. At this time, Wen Zhong didn't have much of an appetite, knowing that the current situation was not in his favor. An adopted child is very different from a biological child, and he didn't think he could easily take over the Wen group. Frowning, he thought about it for a while, and felt that he should go and see for himself.
After all, this was too unexpected.
Chen Yuting could tell that Wen Zhong was unhappy, so she reached out her soft hand to help him relax his furrowed brow. The movement was awkward, after all, she had never done anything like this before. Whether it was with Wen Liang or Wang Yu, they had always looked at her face, afraid that she would be unhappy. Now she had to lower her head and look at the face of another man, and it took Chen Yuting's heart a moment to adjust. This was also the reason why the two had not had sex after so many days of contact, because her heart was full of resentment and remorse. Since she knew that it was because of Wen Liang's scheme that Wang Yu discovered her betrayal, Chen Yuting added another person to the list of people she hated. Not only could he not marry her, but he also had to destroy her marriage, which led to Wang Yu investigating her mother, which in turn caused Chen Xuxing to become suspicious of her. The result was that Chen Yuting divorced Wang Yu and was then swept out of the house by Chen Xusheng. She no longer had a happy and comfortable family, her parents who loved her, and the Chen family's industry had nothing to do with her anymore. The trigger for all these events was Wen Liang's text message and the fact that he had calculated that she had turned off her phone that day.
This made Chen Yuting resent Wen Liang even more. Chapter 123: Wang Yu's Evil Taste.
If Wen Liang really succeeds in inheriting the Wen group, it is not unforgivable to do such a thing. But you are useless, and you were directly stolen by Wang Yu, and you were directly abandoned.
No matter how much persuasion, he wouldn't listen.
He even wanted to take her to some small seaside city to live. What a beautiful thought. After seeing Wen Zhong that night, Chen Yuting had an idea. When Liang couldn't be relied on, she had to find a way to secure her future. So she gave Wen Zhong her phone number, thinking that he could help Wen Liang re-enter the Wen group. However, after a few days of contact, she realized that this man was a powerful figure. Wen Zhong is not an adopted child like Wen Liang, but the direct lineal descendant of the Wen family. He was born to control a part of the family's interests, and no one can take that away from him. So Chen Yuting has a new choice. If Wen Liang can get back on his feet, she still doesn't want to give up. After all, Wen Liang has really been devoted to her for so many years, and she doesn't want to give up just like that. She had been helping Wen Liang negotiate with Wen Zhong and had achieved good results. Wen Zhong had promised that as long as Wen Liang was willing to participate in the plan, he could eventually get 5% of the shares in the Wen Group. When she thought about this, Chen Yuting was very happy. 5% didn't sound like much, but if it were sold, it would be worth at least 3 billion.
Last night, Chen Yuting tentatively told Wen Liang this news.
But Wen Liang directly rejected it at the time and asked Chen Yuting not to contact Wen Zhong again. Wen Liang's reaction was like a bucket of cold water that extinguished Chen Yuting's excited heart. At the thought of losing the current superior life, Chen Yuting directly changed her attitude towards Wen Liang.
Since you gave up on your own, don't blame me for leaving you.
After making up her mind, Chen Yuting did not show it, but calmly accompanied Wen Liang to sleep.
Early the next morning, she found an excuse and went out to start contacting Wen Zhong.
In the past few days, this man's gaze at her had been blatant, so how could she not understand what the other person was thinking? Since Wen Liang's road has reached its end, it is now time to take a different road. The intimate actions of the two in the restaurant were clearly filmed by a man with a common face outside. At this time, Wen Zhong, who was feeling the gentleness of Chen Yuting, would never have thought that he had not yet started his own actions, but had already been targeted, and a big pit had been dug for him to jump into. This man with the common face was Sun Qian's third brother Sun Dishing, who had found him. As a gossip expert, how could he not have the contact information of such professionals? After receiving Sun Qian's call, he had already found someone to start acting. As for Wen Zhong, he didn't know him, but he was very familiar with Chen Yuting.
Moreover, this woman was even seen dining in the restaurant owned by the Sun family. What was there to say?
He immediately called the person over and started collecting information. Although he didn't know what Sun Qian wanted these things for, Sun Dishing had always unconditionally fulfilled his younger sister's requests. Wen Zhong and Chen Yuting spent the whole afternoon together. After they finished eating, the two of them went shopping at the mall.
Wen Zhong, who was from Kyoto, was still very thrifty with his money.
You could see that the two of them were still more than 30 centimeters apart when they entered the mall.
When they came out, Chen Yuting was already hanging on to him.
Wang Yu looked at the information passed over by Sun Dishing and was speechless for a long time. He couldn't understand how he could have been blind and fallen for Chen Yuting at the time.
What, looking at it hurts, do you still want to rekindle the old feelings? Sun Qian looked at Wang Yu's dark face and didn't say anything, so she was ready to provoke him. How could it be? I just can't understand it. How could I have fallen for this kind of woman at the time? In fact, if you just understand what kind of person Chen Yuting is, it's easy to understand. Wang Yu's curious gaze fell on Sun Qian. People like Chen Yuting are the kind of people who want it all.
When she was at the Chens, she didn't lack money, so she didn't know the importance of money, and so she pursued spiritual enjoyment. And at that age, it was just the right time for a young girl to be dreaming of perfect love. But love doesn't pay the bills, and Wen Liang can't be relied on anymore. She wants to continue enjoying the life of the upper class, and it's still easy to understand her doing something like this. As for why she's following this guy, then you'll have to ask Sister Wen.
Sun Qian handed Wen Xin her phone as she spoke. Following someone? Wen Xin didn't know about Sun Qian and Wang Yu's plan at this time.
Just now, she heard Sun Qian's analysis of Chen Yuting's comments, and she was a little curious why the two of them had mentioned this woman. When she took the phone, she saw a photo of her cousin and Chen Yuting together. She was shocked and her mouth opened wide.
Wang Yu felt like he wanted to put something in. This is real. Wen Xin asked incredulously.
In the morning, Wang Yu came and said that Chen Yuting had been in contact with Wen Zhong, and he thought that the two of them were related because of Wen Liang. After all, he had been the general manager of the Wen Group for a period of time, and since Wen Zhong was eyeing his own company, why wouldn't he go to Wen Liang to find out what had happened recently? As for Chen Yuting, in Wen Xin's opinion, it was Wen Zhong who wanted to find her to ask about Wang Yu. After all, she had lived with Wang Yu for 7 years and definitely knew more about him than she did. The place where the two people appeared in the photo and the intimate appearance obviously indicated more than just a simple encounter. Wen Zhong has a wife at home. Wen Xin froze for a long time before she could say such a thing, and then looked at Wang Yu and Sun Qian and asked, "When did you start investigating?" "We just started today. Chen Shushang started investigating even earlier than us. It was him who discovered that Wen Zhong and Chen Yuting had an unusual relationship." Wang Yu explained. "So what do you want to do?" Wen Xin looked at Wang Yu with some reproach in her eyes.
We don't want anything, we just want Wen Liang to see the true face of Chen Yuting.
Wang Yu looked serious, like a good Samaritan.
You would do that for me? Wen Xin obviously didn't believe him.
Of course, there is also a little selfishness, I promise, really, just a little. Wang Yu said with a smile. He was really looking forward to seeing Wen Liang's expression when he saw the photos. Alright, give me the photos, I'll have Wan send them to him, and you two should stop investigating. Wen Xin was speechless at Wang Yu's idea, but she also understood it very well.
Wait.
Sun Xian, who had just taken the phone, received another set of photos and immediately exclaimed after looking at them.
Wow! This is so exciting. You, look, your ex-wife is about to cheat on you again. With that, she handed the phone to Wang Yu.
Wang Yu looked at a few of the photos and was also stunned.
Is Chen Yuting's bottom line really that low?
We've only known each other for a few days, I never thought.
Chapter 124 Retribution. Came too quickly like a tornado. What happened? Wen Xin asked curiously. Wen Zhong and Chen Yuting went to the hotel.
Sun Xian said incredulously, this woman has repeatedly refreshed her outlook on life. You have to know that she is still not broken up with Wen Liang, and the two of them have a child. Although I knew this would eventually happen, it was after I made things clear with Wen Liang and broke up with him.
What is going on now, cheating again and cuckolding Wen Liang? Wen Xin was incredulous when she heard this, and then an unknown anger arose in her heart. What should we do now? Sun Qian asked.
Wang Yu also looked at Wen Xin when he heard this. Although Wen Liang had been driven away, Wen Xin had raised him after all.
Give me the photo.
Okay. Wen Xin did not make a decision for Wen Liang after all, but just sent the photo of the two entering the hotel together to Wen Liang, and she did not intend to get involved in the next matter. You two are not allowed to go out at night, and stay at home properly.
Wen Xin immediately warned Wang Yu and Sun Qian, who were eager to go out and see the fun.
Their intentions were revealed, and the two of them hung their heads and suddenly felt uninteresting. Wen Xin saw that both of them obediently nodded and went back to the bedroom to rest, and Yuan looked at the two of them and obediently followed. As for Wen Hong, Wen Wan, and Wen Jia, although they didn't see the photo, the dialogue between the few people just now was too informative, and they had not finished digesting it yet. They just felt that their former big brother was really pitiful. Wen Liang, who was still trying hard after dinner, heard the message alert on his phone and glanced at it casually. Just now, Chen Yuting had texted him, saying that she would not be back with her mother and daughter that night. Wen Liang didn't care, after all, they would be leaving soon, and it was only natural for her to spend more time with her own mother. His phone rang, and he thought it was Chen Yuting sending him a message. When he saw that the sender was Wen Xin, Wen Liang's calm heart immediately became nervous. His mother had sent him a message, could it be that she had forgiven him? Thinking about this, Wen Liang immediately unlocked and clicked in. 2 minutes later, Wen Liang collapsed in a chair with a deathly pale face. He didn't believe it, he really didn't want to believe these photos, but they were sent by his mother, so he had no choice but to believe it. At the moment, Wen Liang only felt like the sky had collapsed, and the woman he had lost everything to had actually betrayed him. At the moment, he felt like he had lost the meaning of living, and his life had no direction. Holding the phone, looking at the beautiful face of Chen Yuting in the photo, Wen Liang just felt really strange. While he was feeling sad, he received another text message from Wen Wan. This time there was no photo, but the address and room number of a hotel. Sun Qian received the message from Sun Dishing and immediately told Wen Wan. There was just a photo of the two of them entering the hotel earlier. I didn't expect the person that San Gu found to be so helpful, getting the room number so quickly. This time Sun Qian did not tell Wen Xin, but passed the message to Wen Liang through Wen Wan. Wen Liang, who had received Wen Wan's message, was now filled with a bone-chilling fear and seething with rage. He grabbed the car keys and rushed to the hotel. Xiao Yu, is something going to happen? Sun Qian was a little worried. What if Wen Liang really went over there and killed Wen Zhong? Don't worry, it'll be a fight at most, no one will die. If that doesn't work, we'll call the police when we see Wen Liang go in. Wang Yu was enjoying the spectacle, and now he had asked Sun Dishing for the contact information of the people following Wen Liang. After some communication, the two of them had a video call. At this moment, the phone screen kept freezing on the empty hotel corridor, but Wang Yu was still very excited. His mood was no less than the night he found out about Wen Xin and Wen Liang's relationship. Wang Yu didn't feel any remorse for Wen Liang and Chen Yuting, the pair who had screwed him over so badly. If he wasn't worried about hurting Wen Xin, Wang Yu would have bought a green sun hat and put it on Wen Liang when he came over.
Uncle Wang, I sent the message.
Shanshan promised to let the three of us watch the live broadcast together. After Wen Wan sent the message, she came over and asked to watch it together, while Wen Jia and Wen Hong also looked forward to it.
How can we miss such a big melon?
Come here, keep your voice down, don't let your mom hear. Wang Yu greeted them, and the five of them gathered together, looking at the empty hotel corridor on their phones, as if there was some wonderful performance going on inside. Time passed by minute, but Wen Liang, who they were waiting for, did not appear.
Sun Qian was getting a little anxious and couldn't help but complain. This guy won't be mad to death, right? He still hasn't come.
Don't worry, my brother is in good health, he has a physical every year, Wen Jia whispered. Right, apart from me, the other three of them are all in good health.
Stop it, there's something going on.
Wang Yu, who had been staring at the screen, immediately noticed that the elevator door opposite had opened. However, it was too far away and the screen was a bit small, so he couldn't see clearly who was coming up. The few people stared nervously at the screen, and as the person approaching got closer, they stopped breathing at the same time and stared without taking their eyes off the screen.
It's him, Wen Hong whispered. 2 seconds later, Wen Liang's pale face appeared on the phone.
Although it was not very clear due to the angle, Wang Yu still recognized him at first glance. Xian Shen called the guy and asked him to call the police, then followed him without being afraid of being exposed, and turned on the voice. At this moment, Wang Yu understood Wen Liang's feelings very well. After all, he felt the same way. Back then, when they first met Wen Liang after getting divorced from Chen Yuting, if Dean Han and Su Mu had not held him tightly, he would have probably beaten him to death. And at this moment, Wen Liang was probably even more excited than Wang Yu. After all, Wang Yu could only imagine the scene in his head at that time, while Wen Liang was about to witness it with his own eyes. As he had said, he immediately followed. As soon as Sun Qian finished speaking, the screen on the phone changed.
In just a few seconds, Wen Liang's figure appeared again.
At that moment, a waiter was opening a room door, and Wen Liang stood there indifferently. As for why the hotel waiter helped Wen Liang open the door, it was because the guy had used his money power.
Specifically, open this room for me.
Sir.
10,000. No, sir. 50,000. This is not about money. 100,000. I'll get fired. 500,000, if you don't open it, I'll find someone else.
Wen Liang then took out a check and handed it to the waiter. Sir, I understand your feelings, but please remain calm. Wen Liang was in this state, so how could the hotel waiter guess what was going on? After taking the check, he took out a room card from his pocket. This kind of thing happens a few times a month, but the hotel generally does not help open doors.
If someone causes trouble, they just call the police. As for Wen Liang's situation, it can only be said that rich people will do everything they can, not to mention people. Chapter 125, I never expected it. The waiter gently placed the card in the induction area of the electronic lock, and Wen Liang's heart began to race. The 5 people watching the live broadcast couldn't wait to get into the screen of their phones and go directly to the scene to watch. The door opened.
I see.
Why isn't Wen Liang going in? I don't know. What's going on? Several people looked at Wen Liang's figure standing motionless at the door of the room and couldn't help but discuss it. Brother, go check the door, it doesn't matter if you're exposed at this time. Hearing this, the little brother obediently walked over, and the camera directly shone into the room. Holy shit! This is so exciting. Why are there 2 guys, where's Chen Yuting? At this time, the situation in the room completely exceeded Wang Yu and Sun Qian's expectations. Just now, Wen Liang was still complaining about Wen Liang, but when the door opened, they didn't rush in and start fighting, but stood there like an idiot. Seeing the scene of the bayonet charge in the room, Wang Yu's back was covered in fine beads of sweat. Which normal man would dare to rush in? Wen Liang, why are you here? Wen Zhong was naked on the bed, enjoying the pleasure from a certain part of his body, when the door suddenly opened. When he turned around, he saw Wen Liang, and immediately flew into a rage. He had hidden his secret for so many years, and now someone had discovered it. I. Wen Liang was speechless. He had come to catch Wen Zhong in the act, but what was going on? Damn it! Shut the door. Seeing Wen Liang's stupid face, Wen Zhong couldn't help but swear. Sir, there is no one you are looking for here, but the money will not be refunded. The waiter was well informed and quickly came to her senses.
She took 2 steps back, covered her pockets, and finished, then immediately slipped away. Seeing this scene in front of her, she felt like washing her eyes, or she would really go blind. Seeing Wen Liang still standing in the doorway without moving, the burly man behind Wen Zhong became impatient. Although this pretty boy looked quite to his liking, he could not let it affect his money-making.
He immediately walked towards Wen Liang on 3 legs.
"Friend, I'm paid to do a job, and I've only known your boyfriend for a few days, so it won't affect your relationship." Hearing Wen Zhong shout out Wen Liang's name just now, the burly man thought that the two of them were in a relationship. At the moment, it should be that this handsome young man found out that his boyfriend was cheating on him, and then came over to catch him in the act, so he quickly opened his mouth to explain.
"My motherfucker."
Wen Liang, who had not yet recovered, was once again confused by the strong man's harsh words.
"Who am I? Where am I? What do I want to do?"
At this time, he only felt that his mind was not enough. Seeing that Wen Liang still did not speak, the strong man directly reached out and tried to drag him into the house. Although it was not cold, his friend was more afraid of the wind, so they should talk inside the house.
Maybe they could close another deal tonight. "Let go of me, I'm not going in."
Wen Liang suddenly came to his senses when the burly man grabbed him. If he went into this house today, he might as well just kill himself.
At this moment, Wen Liang's terrified expression appeared on the screen of the mobile phone.
His face was white and terrified, and he was desperately struggling with one hand against the doorframe, as if he were a monk about to be dragged into a brothel. Looking at the two people tugging at the door, Wen Zhong had an idea. Since this guy had found out, he would drag him down with him, and then he would not be afraid of the secret being revealed. He immediately spoke up and urged,
"Hurry up, don't let anyone see." Just when Wen Liang was desperate, the police arrived.
Seeing a 3-legged man on the scene tugging on a handsome young man, they immediately yelled,
"Let go of the boy."
Then he rushed over, and the 2 policemen immediately pinned the strong man to the ground, and then gave him a pair of silver bracelets.
"Comrade policeman, save me, they tried to molest me."
Wen Liang saw his savior and cried like a child in the lap of a comrade policeman.
"Okay, young man, you're safe."
Looking at the situation in front of him, the comrade policeman also knew that Wen Liang was in a state of great shock at the moment, and immediately spoke gently to comfort him.
"What are you doing here, comrade?"
Our little stalker was also questioned by the police at this time. "I was just passing by, I heard some noise and came to take a look, and yes, I called the police." The little stalker immediately began to explain. After so many years, this was the first time he had encountered such a thrilling event.
"I couldn't help but secretly admire Sun Dishing.
He is worthy of being one of the Sun family's 3 heroes, and he is extraordinary. The little guy's equipment is very advanced, the camera is installed on the glasses he is wearing, and you can't find it unless you take them off and examine them carefully.
What's more, this guy is smart.
He even rented a room on this floor, which he will need right now." The noise outside makes the residents on the floor stick their heads out to check what's going on. When they see a naked man in handcuffs struggling to put on his pants, and then look at the young man next to him crying bitterly, they all come to life for a moment. One bold guy even goes over to see if there is an unclothed woman inside.
"Holy cow! It's a guy."
This buddy couldn't help but shout out when he saw Wen Zhong, who was hastily dressing.
The police are going back to sleep.
Looking at the crowd that had just stuck their heads out to watch the melon eating, the police officer in charge immediately shouted a warning. Wen Zhong hated the stalker at this time.
This guy actually called the police.
It was hard to explain the situation, but fortunately, he was not in Kyoto. Basically no one in the city of Su knows him, and this kind of thing is not a big deal.
He'll probably be able to pay a little money and get out.
Thinking this, Wen Zhong's nervous heart also let go.
As for Wen Liang, he didn't even care about him.
Now he regretted not sleeping with Chen Yuting right away. Instead, he opened another room and told her to wait inside, thinking that he would enjoy himself in the first half of the night and wait until the second half of the night to put in the effort.
"Wen Liang, why are you here?"
Chen Yuting didn't want to come out and see the commotion outside, but Wen Liang's cries were so loud that she could hear them through the door, and the more she listened, the more familiar they sounded. After enduring it for a few minutes, she was really curious and secretly opened the door to have a look. Who knew she would see Wen Liang, who was still choking back his tears?
"Yuting, you're really here."
As expected, Wen Liang, the big lickspittle, immediately perked up when he heard Chen Yuting's voice. Seeing that the woman opposite Wen Zhong's room was actually his own, he immediately pushed open the door and barged in. After a quick inspection, he found that there was nothing inside, and there were no signs of a struggle on the bed or in the bathroom. He took a closer look at Chen Yuting, and was relieved to see that her clothes were neat and her hair was in place. He thought to himself that his mother must have misunderstood, because after all, it did seem like there was an issue between the two of them in the photos.
However, after seeing Wen Zhong's puckered butt, Wen Liang no longer doubted Chen Yuting.
Chapter 126, Chen Yuting, who dares not cause any more trouble.
What are you doing?
Seeing Wen Liang run to his room to check things out, Chen Yuting felt a little relieved that she hadn't done anything with Wen Zhong. But she still had to do a good job of covering things up, otherwise it would look like she was guilty.
Yuting, let's hurry up and go, Shudu is too dangerous to stay.
Wen Liang nervously took Chen Yuting's hand and said, if the police hadn't arrived in time, his innocence would have been gone.
Young man, don't go yet, you need to go to the police station to make a statement.
The policeman quickly went over to Wen Liang, who was about to pull Chen Yuting away, and stopped him.
No, I don't know anything. Just let me go.
Looking back at the burly man still trying to explain, Wen Liang just wanted to get out of there.
Don't worry, it'll be over soon.
The victim in front of him had been subjected to extreme mental stress, and the policeman could understand why he wanted to hide. After all, in these kinds of situations, it's usually the girls who get dragged in, and this was the first time they'd seen it happen.
Okay, but I really don't know anything.
Wen Liang had no choice but to give in when he saw that he couldn't leave. After the commotion was over, Wen Liang, Wen Zhong, and the burly man were all taken into the police station. The young man who had followed them left the scene as an enthusiastic member of the public who had called the police, and made a statement on the spot.
Chen Yuting still didn't know what had happened. When she saw Wen Liang, Wen Zhong, and a man with a carefree attitude being taken into the police car, she asked for the address, took the car keys Wen Liang had just given her, and followed them to the police station. After waiting anxiously at the door for half an hour, Chen Yuting saw Wen Liang walk out with a pale face. What on earth had happened? Chen Yuting still didn't know what had caused such a scene at the police station, and why Wen Liang was so afraid. Let's go home first, let me calm down. The two got into the car, and Wen Liang sat directly in the passenger seat, closing his eyes and not wanting to say a word. Chen Yuting had some issues of her own, and since Wen Liang had been able to chase her to the hotel, she wasn't sure how much he knew, and didn't dare to ask at the moment, so she drove home obediently. The two were silent the whole way, and soon returned to the villa. As soon as they entered the living room, Wen Liang rushed to the water dispenser and poured a large glass of water, gulping it down. Usually, he pays attention to his appearance, but at this moment, he didn't care about his image, just kept gulping, completely ignoring the fact that a large part of his shirt in front of his chest was wet. After drinking 5 large glasses of cold water, Wen Liang finally calmed down a bit, and went to Chen Yuting and put his arms around her. Today really scared him. He was originally at home working on a plan, and then received photos of his woman going to a hotel with another man. Feeling his life was bleak, he angrily went to catch the adulterer. Who would have thought that he didn't catch the adulterer, and his own ass was almost blown up by 2 people? At this time, Wen Liang's mind was only filled with the relief of surviving the ordeal. He didn't have the slightest doubt about Chen Yuting, even though he didn't know why she was there. However, Wen Zhong used facts to prove that he had nothing to do with Chen Yuting, and Wen Liang also saw this for himself. Okay, what happened? Can you tell me? Chen Yuting patted Wen Liang on the back and said gently. How did you end up in the same hotel as Wen Zhong? Didn't you text me that you were going to your mother's to keep your daughter company? Wen Liang asked, pulling Chen Yuting onto the sofa and sitting down. Although he no longer suspected infidelity, he was still curious as to why she had appeared there. It's not for you, I was thinking of asking Wen Zhong to see if there was any way I could get you to stay in the Wen group. Chen Yuting's explanation was impeccable to Wen Liang. The two of them had argued about this last night, and now he thought about it, his woman had gone against his wishes. But after all, she was still thinking of him, and Wen Liang immediately couldn't help but take Chen Yuting's hand. Don't you ever go to Wen Zhong again, this guy is too dangerous. What's wrong? Why were you both brought to the police station? Listen to me. Someone sent me a photo of you and Wen Zhong together today, and they also gave me the room number of that hotel, so I couldn't help but go looking for you. Wen Liang became more and more agitated as he spoke, but was interrupted by the even more agitated Chen Yuting. Who sent you this? I don't know, it was a strange number. This was obviously a misunderstanding. Wen Liang had sent the photo, but he himself had taken it seriously. However, he couldn't tell Chen Yuting this, so he decided to lie to her. None of that matters. Next, I went to the address provided and spent 500,000 yuan to get the door opened by the waiter. Do you know what I saw?
What did you see?
Wen Zhong. That strong man was standing behind him. He started to pull me in without any clothes on.
Wen Liang was a good speaker, and he carefully told Chen Yuting what had happened between the time he saw Wen Zhong and the time the police came to save him.
Then I saw you, and you know the rest.
After he finished, Wen Liang looked at Chen Yuting, who was still in a daze, and waved his hand in front of her eyes.
I'm going to the bathroom.
After he said that, Chen Yuting ran into the bathroom, turned the faucet on full, let a pool of cold water fill the basin, and then put her head in. It was close, so close that she almost had that kind of relationship with Wen Zhong.
It was so dangerous.
After listening to Wen Liang's words, Chen Yuting felt that the heavens were still favoring her, otherwise if she waited until later and discovered Wen Zhong's true face, she would not be able to bring herself back even if she killed herself 10 times. Chen Yuting, who had many petty calculations and thoughts in her heart, now just felt that it was really good to be alive. Thinking about Wen Liang, who had appeared today, she deeply felt that she had wronged him. He had already saved her twice, and now the two of them still had tens of millions of yuan and could enjoy a good life, so they should stop messing around. If she kept struggling, she might meet someone even more terrifying than Wen Zhong, and then it would really be all over. Thinking of this, Chen Yuting raised her nearly suffocated head out of the water, gave herself 2 hard slaps, and then dried herself with a towel before walking out. When she arrived at Wen Liang, she threw herself directly into his arms, her voice very gentle as she said, "Shui Di, take Shui Jie away with you tomorrow. After we've settled down, we'll come back and pick up our daughter."
Chen Yuting no longer wanted to argue at this point.
Wen Zhong had not only scared Wen Liang, but also scared her half to death.
We'll leave tomorrow. Shuzhou is too dangerous.
Wen Zhong can't be locked up for a few days, and he will definitely retaliate against me when he gets out.
Okay, we'll do whatever you say. Let's register our marriage when things settle down. Coco will soon be going to kindergarten.
The two snuggled up to each other, each concealing a little secret, but both determined to live together peacefully in the future.
But some things have already happened, and you can't hide from them if you want to. Chapter 127, Sweet, Sweet. When Lianhe and Chen Yuting's affair ended with the departure of the stalker, and Wang Yu and the others stopped making a fuss. What adultery, catching someone in the act, and wearing a green had all paled in comparison in the presence of Wen Zhongsan and the 3 strong men. Not only could the 3 children not stand such miraculous events, but even Wang Yu and Sun Qian's spirits were hurt to a certain extent. These few days, Wang Yu has been behaving himself and keeping the 3 women company. At night, he would sleep with his hand unconsciously placed on his own buttocks. When Xian and Yuwen didn't know what was going on, and felt that Wang Yu had changed too much, wondering if he was worried about something. This day, when Xian took Wang Yu to the bedroom to talk, and Sun Qian went straight over. After more than 2 hours of communication and explanation, Wen Xian's outlook on life was also refreshed. In short, Wen Xian, who had experienced her mother's suicide, a scumbag cheating on her, and years of backstabbing in the business world, was also speechless for a long time after watching the video clip sent by the tracking boy. She had thought about waiting until after dealing with the second uncle's cousins to take Wang Yu to visit them, but now she decided to forget it and stay away from Wen Zhong, who was really toxic. After Wen Zhong was taken to the police station, he cooperated with the police and did not use his energy to get out of trouble. After all, this kind of thing should not be publicized. After interrogation, it was determined that Wen Zhong's behavior was prostitution, and he was fined 5,000 and detained for 1 week. As for the big man, he was imprisoned for prostitution, and there would be a detailed interrogation later to catch a few more along the trail. It wasn't until after Wang Yu and Sun Qian's wedding was over that Wang Yu finally came out of the shadow of the last time. At this time, Wen Liang and Chen Yuting had long since disappeared, and Wen Zhong also returned directly to Beijing after leaving the detention center. In the following period, Wang Yu spent time with his woman and had a good time every day. After attending the wedding, his parents did not stay in Shuzhou City, but returned to their hometown after staying in Wang Yu's house for a few days. Sun Qian and Yuwen still lived in her house, and Wen Xian had no intention of moving in with her 3 children. After asking Sangu for help, Wang Yu spent a few days buying a villa, but there was no one in it now. "Sister Wen, this is not good, we 3 can't stand it anymore," Sun Qian said with a thoughtful face as she sat in a chair. "Yes, Brother Yu's condition is getting worse and worse, what are we going to do in the future?" Yuwen was very scared when she thought about what had happened a few days ago. "This is not a solution, why don't we?" Wen Xian made a bold suggestion. Sun Qian and Yuwen were stunned for a moment when they heard this, and then nodded in agreement at the same time. Then the 3 women began a heated discussion.
At this time, Wang Yu, who had come to the clinic, saw Sweetie, who had been away for many days, and missed her very much. There was nothing to do in the morning, so the two of them chatted casually.
Sweetie, how are things with Tian Hao?
Wang Yu had received a text message from Ji Xiaoning some time ago, saying that Sweetie had been delivering meals to Tian Hao for a while, and now it had been more than a month, so he wanted to ask about their progress.
What do you mean?
Sweetie blinked her big, intelligent eyes and asked curiously.
You two aren't dating?
Hearing this, Wang Yu's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and a bad feeling welled up in his heart. He felt that this matter might not be as simple as it seemed.
No, who told you that we're dating? Tian Tian's little face instantly turned red, and her voice unconsciously raised an octave, obviously a little angry and annoyed. No, didn't you deliver lunch to him every day a while ago? Everyone saw it. Wang Yu frowned and muttered to himself, could it be that kid Ji Ning tricked me?
Oops, it was my mom who told me to go. She said that the other person saved my life before, so I should give them some food as a token of my gratitude. Sweetie hurriedly explained, her little face full of grievances.
Sweetie waved her hand to indicate that she didn't want to go. A life-saving kindness, and you're not going to marry him? Wang Yu, who was acting as a matchmaker for the first time, was a little unwilling. Who do you want me to promise to, those two saviors? Tian Tian looked at Wang Yu and smiled like a little fox.
What two saviors?
Wang Yu said with some guilt. Brother Yu, is someone else's mouth sweet?
Saying this, Tian Tian looked at Wang Yu with a smile, then stuck out her pink little tongue and licked her lips.
Holy cow! Wang Yu was directly offline, how did this girl know? Brother Yu, look.
Sweetie said, and took out her phone, then opened a short video.
It clearly recorded the whole process from Wang Yu's rescue to the moment he pulled Tian Hao over to take the blame after the kiss. Where did you get this? I'm not telling you. Brother Yu, you still haven't answered me, isn't my mouth sweet?
Sweetie said, and pulled the chair to sit in front of Wang Yu.
Looking at the young nurse so close, Wang Yu was a little scared. He knew that he currently had a major physical defect.
At this time, the unique, sweet fragrance of a young girl made him feel very uncomfortable.
Tian Tian, sit further away, it's too hot. No, you haven't answered my question yet, and who do you think I want to commit myself to?
Instead of backing away, Tian Tian stood up, bent over, and aligned her delicate little face with Wang Yu's, staring him straight in the eye as he looked away. Wang Yu, who was a bit impulsive in nature, didn't know what to do at this point. To be honest, a man who could hold back in this situation was really worse than an animal.
I'm married.
With that, Wang Yu turned his head.
You've done it before and still got divorced. Tian Tian reached out and turned his head back. As soon as he turned his head, Wang Yu looked into Tian Tian's neckline. He promised that he didn't do it on purpose, really. Everything was a coincidence. Tian Tian, I have a girlfriend, really. We don't have a future. With that, Wang Yu stood up. He was afraid that if things continued like this, his innocence would be lost. After he finished speaking, he was ready to leave directly. After listening to his words, Tian Tian was stunned in place, a little incredulous, so much so that when Wang Yu ran away, she didn't even react. As a young girl in her early 20s, she still firmly believes in beautiful love stories. Although Tian Hao did save her at the time, Tian Tian didn't have that impulse. After all, the two of them didn't even know each other. But Wang Yu was different. The two fought together and quit their jobs together. Over the past few months, Wang Yu had spent the most time with her. And after her accident, Wang Yu saved her first and took care of her and her mother's worries. Even this job with little work and a lot of money was arranged by Wang Yu. The friendship of comrades in arms, the life-saving kindness, and the timely help in a time of need. Wang Yu, with these three feelings overlapping, was just the boyfriend she had longed for in her heart. Chapter 128, Sumu meets Wang Yu again. They hadn't seen each other for more than 10 days, and Sweetie's longing for Wang Yu grew day by day. After seeing him today, she couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. But what she didn't expect was that just as Sweetie was about to reveal her true feelings, Wang Yu revealed his own. And now he's even running away, leaving this cute little nurse all alone. Sweetie's mind was buzzing, not knowing what to do. Wang Yu's words kept repeating in her head. Brother Yu said he has 3 women. Brother Yu actually left. But Brother Yu didn't reject me. But he has 3 women now. What should I do? I'm so scared. What should I do? Love is in conflict with her own values.
Sitting in Wang Yu's seat, with her big eyes wide open, she is at a loss for what to do. Wang Yu, who had run out, smoked several cigarettes in a row in the corridor.
He now needs to calm down and think about how to get along with Tian Tian in the future.
Otherwise, if things go on like this, sooner or later something will happen between them. If he can't help himself and eats Sweetie,
he'll be torn to pieces by Wen Xin and Sun Xian when he goes back.
If that doesn't work, he'll just have to change nurses. He'll get Sweetie a new position and get a male nurse to come over. Just as he thinks this, the image of Wen Zhong appears in Wang Yu's mind, and he immediately shakes his head to reject the idea.
But if he gets another female nurse, what if he, who is so attractive, falls for him again? Should I get a more mature nurse? But who can guarantee that a more mature nurse won't fall in love with him? Wen Xin and Sun Xian are a cautionary tale. This guy is really narcissistic.
He has a lot of thoughts going through his mind, but none of them are normal. After thinking about it for a while, he still doesn't have a good solution. He feels that he should go in there and have a good talk with Tian Tian.
He already has 3 women, and who can accept a normal woman? As for the 3 women who accept him, is that normal? If it were normal, how could something happen after he got drunk?
At this time, the 3 women still discussing in the bedroom had already written Sweetie's name in a small notebook, and in front of Sweetie's name was another name.
Upon closer inspection, it was actually Su Mu. I don't know what these 3 women are doing, writing other people's names so happily. Why don't they write Wen Wan and Wen Jia's names as well? Brother Yu, you're back.
Sweetie noticed Wang Yu the moment he came in and immediately stood up to give him his seat. Tian Tian, it's not that Brother Yu doesn't want to, but it really can't be helped. You're so cute, you'll definitely find a boyfriend of your own choosing. Wang Yu earnestly persuaded, and in order to spare the young nurse's feelings, he didn't dare to say that he was rejecting her, but that it was for personal reasons that he couldn't accept.
Brother Yu, I know. Tian Tian lowered her head, feeling very uncomfortable.
When she heard that Wang Yu had 3 women, she was just a little surprised, not sad, and there was an urge to say that she didn't care. However, the education she had received since childhood made her hold her tongue. At this time, she heard Wang Yu's words and knew that the 2 of them were impossible.
Even if they were both willing, would the 3 sisters-in-law be vegetarians?
When they found out, they would go to the hospital and tear themselves apart.
Thinking about this, Tian Tian became a little scared.
A few days ago, it was rumored that an affair had been caught in a hotel, and it seemed to be a love triangle involving 3 men. When Sweetie was free, she also watched some related short videos, and she used to think it was nothing to watch the mistress being chased and beaten, and her clothes being torn off. But now she is very scared when she thinks of this image. It's okay, girl, just follow Brother Yu well, and don't think about these messy things in the future. Seeing that the little nurse was obedient again, Wang Yu was still very happy, reached out and touched her little head, and was very doting in his heart. By the way, Brother Yu, Dr. Su came by yesterday and asked you to find her when you had time. After calming down, Tian Tian remembered what Su Mu had come over to explain yesterday. She and Wang Yu had chatted for more than an hour, and she had only just remembered now. Indeed, love can make a person's brain go blank. Well, I'll go over there for a bit, and you get the materials ready for the patients that need to be treated this afternoon. I'll come back later to check. After saying this, Wang Yu left. Su Mu didn't call in when she had something to discuss, but instead asked Sweetie to relay the message. It was obviously not an urgent matter, and Wang Yu didn't care much about it. Thinking that the 2 of them had studied and exchanged ideas together for more than a month, he felt that there must be some issue that he wanted to ask himself. When he arrived at Su Mu's clinic, he looked inside and sure enough, there were a lot of people.
Since Wang Yu left Marian Hospital, many patients stopped going there because they couldn't find Dr. Wang. The news that Wang Yu was now working at Shiguang Hospital had only spread to the upper echelons of society in Shudu City. After all, the consultation fee of 2 million yuan was not affordable to the average wealthy person. After Su Mu came to Shiguang Hospital to work, his reputation and fame also spread. People are always forgetful, and it had only been more than 3 months since he disappeared, but no one had mentioned the great name of the divine Dr. Wang anymore. Now the legend of Dr. Su has begun to spread in Shudu City. Compared to Wang Yu, in addition to his superb medical skills, Su Mu's beauty has also spread. As a result, most of the women who come to see Su Mu now are accompanied by a man. At first, they thought it was their husband, but after a long time, they realized that they were addressing the wrong person. Sister, next time you get sick, I'll carry you here again. Little sister, I'll pay for your medical expenses this time. Daughter, don't tell your mother that I brought you here today. Grandpa, Grandma just passed away last month. Similar things like these can be heard in the waiting room every day. Watching the busy Sumu, Wang Yu seemed to see his former self, but he was much better than Sumu. Treating 200 patients a day, Sumu should forget about it, and at this rate, 100 is enough. Dr. Wang, is there something you need?
A young nurse who had met Wang Yu before saw Wang Yu standing in front of the clinic door and asked curiously.
Well, Director Su told me to come over, but now she is busy, so I will wait outside for a while.
Wang Yu politely replied. Dr. Wang, it's not Director Su anymore, it should be called President Su now. The little nurse reminded with a smile.
Damn it! Where's Han? Has he quit or defected?
Wang Yu wasn't unwilling for Su Mu to become the president, but Han Kuan really gave him a good impression. No, President Han is still here. Director Su has been promoted to vice president of the hospital.
Oh, you startled me. I thought Lao Han had run away.
Wang Yu let out a sigh of relief, then dismissed the young nurse. He didn't feel there was any issue with Su Mu being promoted to vice president. After all, apart from her personal abilities, her father had invested a lot of money in the hospital. Dr. Wang, come in for a moment. Seeing Wang Yu standing in the doorway, Su Mu's eyes lit up and she immediately beckoned him over. Chapter 129, Su Mu starts to take action. Su Mu's greeting made the patients and accompanying family members in the room look over.
Wang Yu didn't care and walked straight in. I haven't seen you for many days.
Su Mu's delicate face still gives him a sense of awe.
Wait a minute. Su Mu smiled apologetically at Wang Yu and then continued to see patients.
After a few minutes of seeing this patient, Wang Yu saw Su Mu directly close the ward door.
No more? Wang Yu was a little curious.
Well, I finished seeing all the patients who came in this morning. Su Mu seemed to have remembered something, and a smile could not help but appear on her face.
So you're not going to see all those people outside?
When I came here just now, there were quite a few people outside, but now it's not even 11 o'clock and he's already closed the door.
He's not as dedicated as I thought.
There are other doctors, and some have afternoon appointments. Anyway, I saw 30 patients this morning. As if she could read Wang Yu's thoughts, Su Mu continued.
Not everyone is like you, seeing all the patients who come in every day. No, you don't all see all the patients who come in every day?
Yes, that was also the case at Mary Hospital before. Each doctor who sits in on consultations can freely arrange their own time as long as they complete the required tasks every day.
Holy shit! So all the overtime I did seeing patients every day was for nothing?
Wang Yu felt that he must have been taken advantage of by Dean Han.
Indeed, the annual salary of 5 million was not that easy to come by. Don't think about it anymore. At the time, no one knew that you could see that many patients a day. After that, when I saw that you were working so hard every day, I thought you wanted to make more money. The resident doctors at Mary Hospital get a corresponding commission for seeing an extra patient every day after completing the hospital's tasks. This is why President Han gave Wang Yu such a high treatment split at the time.
What Wang Yu didn't know at the time was that this was purely pirated goods. Even the medical license was handled with the help of President Han, and he didn't understand anything about the hospital. He was used to working in an office, and thought that hospitals were the same, where you had to see everyone who came in for a consultation every day. This resulted in Wang Yu and Tian Tian being constantly busy like dogs. As for why Tian Tian didn't mention it to Wang Yu, she thought he knew at the time, not to mention the relationship between doctors and nurses, which made Tian Tian afraid to refuse the work arrangements. Moreover, as an assistant, she also got paid for each patient treated, and although she was tired every day, the little nurse was more than willing to work for the money. Let's go, Nan Nan is being discharged today, let's go over there and help her with the re-examination. After Su Mu packed up her tools and desk, she stated her purpose for looking for Wang Yu.
The policewoman?
She's recovering quite well, I went to visit her a while ago. Upon hearing Su Mu's words, Wang Yu thought of the brave policewoman and the huge amount of merit points he had plucked from her colleagues. But now he can't reap any more merit points, because Wang Yu has already reaped all the points from the team members who come here regularly.
Now, whenever he's free, he goes to the place where the families of police officers and firefighters go for treatment, and whenever he sees someone young in uniform, he bestows blessings on them, and then leaves after work, just like he's completing a daily task. As for merit points, he has quite a lot now, although 100 points are deducted every day for protecting his hometown, but the people he has blessed are giving him a lot more. However, there is still some way to go before reaching the 100,000 mark. Go on, just do me a favor and check it again.
Sumu said and tried to take Wan Yu's hand. Okay, I'll go. Taking a step back, Wan Yu noticed that in addition to Tian Tian, this female doctor in the hospital also had ulterior motives towards him. Seeing the way Wan Yu was avoiding her, Sumu's eyes darkened for a moment, before firming up again. Ignoring Wan Yu's obvious rejection, she went over and took him by the arm, then blushed and walked directly out the door. Along the way, the actions of the two attracted the attention of many doctors and nurses.
Although Wan Yu was wearing a mask, he still couldn't resist the gaze of the onlookers.
Moreover, there were quite a few people in this hospital who were arranged by the Sun brothers to be sent in.
If this got back to their ears, it would be a big problem.
I've only been married to Chen Tian for a few days, and I've already hooked up with another doctor in the hospital.
They might as well hammer me to death. Dr. Su, can you let go of me?
I'm married now, so please respect my marriage certificate.
Cut the crap. You think I don't know that you had 2 weddings in your hometown and in Shuzhou City, but did you go to the Civil Affairs Bureau? Respect your marriage certificate? Do you have a certificate that I should respect?
Sumu thought about the information her father had given her and couldn't help but want to punch Wang Yu. This guy actually had 3 women and only had ceremonies without getting a certificate, and he is still legally single.
How do you know? You investigated me. Don't think too much.
My father heard it when he was drinking with the 3rd Sun family member and then told me to stay away from you.
Sun dishing, it really had to be you. So you know everything, why don't you let me go?
Wan Yu only felt that this woman was sick and could not understand what people were saying.
What do you mean let go? You are single now, and so am I. Who is in the way?
At first hearing, this sounded very reasonable and Wan Yu could not refute it, but that was not the case. Sumu's courage had grown at this time, and as long as he lost face at the beginning, the rest would be fine.
I have 3 women.
Wan Yu tried to wake up the beautiful doctor.
It's okay, I'm confident I can snatch you away from them.
Sumu's words were full of confidence.
Your father told you to stay away from me.
Wan Yu intimidated the other person by referring to their elders.
Oh, I forgot to tell you, I never listened to my father when I was young. I'm the eldest in the family, and my father listens to me. Dr. Su.
Looking at Sumu, who seemed a little abnormal, Wan Yu couldn't help but remind her.
From now on, call me Mumu.
The beautiful doctor was now in the zone.
Mumu. Forget it, I won't argue with a woman. What's wrong?
Sumu turned her head back and looked at Wan Yu curiously. She didn't expect him to be so obedient.
We seem to have gone past it. Nan Nan's ward is in building 2.
As she said, Wan Yu pointed at building 4 in front of them. Looking at the big 4 in front of her, Sumu, who was quite bold just now, blushed directly, which was so embarrassing. She even took someone else to check up on her best friend, and even needed the other person to remind her of the way.
And she didn't say anything earlier.
Sumu glared at Wang Yu, let go of his arm, and turned around directly to leave. What are you standing there for, just go. After taking a few steps, Sumu couldn't help but call out to Wang Yu, who was still standing in the
same place. Regarding women's unreasonable and fickle nature, Wang Yu gained a deeper understanding through Sumu.
At the moment, he felt that it was better to remain unchanged in the face of change.
Chapter 130. The sky is poisonous.
Arriving at Nan Nan's ward, Wang Yu was still very gratified when he looked at the heroic female police officer in front of him.
Thank you, Dr. Wang.
Nan Nan, who was packing her things, immediately thanked Sumu for bringing her savior. You're welcome, as a doctor, this is what I should do. The two were not familiar with each other, and they had only met a few times when they came to bless her, and basically never spoke.
Don't pack up, Nan Nan, come over here and let brother Yu check you again. Sumu did remember the reason why he had asked Wan Yu to come over. Brother Yu. Nan Nan smiled meaningfully at Wan Yu after hearing this.
But the guy didn't care at all. He had already made it clear that he was going to steal her away, and he wouldn't be surprised if he called her husband.
Officer Zhou, please sit down, I'll take your pulse. Sumu and I are good friends, so you can just call me Nan Nan. It's too polite to call me officer.
Nan Nan said with a smile. Wang Yu didn't care about the names, and began to examine Nan Nan. First, he made a preliminary diagnosis based on his own studies over the past few months, and then compared the results with the system.
Basically the same, Nan Nan has recovered very well.
The broken blood vessels and wounds have completely healed under the hands of the gynecological expert.
He said. Nothing serious, just a bit weak and lacking in blood.
The body still needs to be nourished properly. Saying this, Wang Yu prescribed a formula to replenish qi and nourish blood, all of which he had learned while studying at the Su family.
Brother Yu, do you want to help Nan Nan look at the scars on her skin? Su Mu asked with some concern.
In the past, Wang Yu also promised that these scars would slowly disappear after more than a year, but now they are still there. However, Nan Nan's scars have recovered very well, beyond her understanding, but Su Mu is still a little worried. You have to know that your best friend has not yet married. Now that there are a few more scars the size of small fists on her body, she will be afraid to wear nice clothes when she goes out in the future. Nan Nan frowned at Su Mu's words. The scars on her body were really ugly. Although her personality was a bit more masculine, she would never really consider the gunshot wound as her military merit badge. She had also seen it when changing the medicine, and it really was ugly. One scar was already hard to bear, but she had several on her body. Late at night, Nan Nan would silently stroke her scars with her hands and secretly shed tears. Su Mu's words made the mood of the two women sink, and Wang Yu also felt a bit awkward. The prescription he wrote was completely in line with the treatment method suggested by the system, and there is no way it would leave scars.
He can guarantee that.
What Wang Yu finds awkward is how he is going to examine it himself, knowing that he knows exactly where the scars are.
Does he want Nan Nan to strip naked again so that he can have a look? Even if she is willing, he is not. He knows that Wang Yu simply cannot stand such a test right now, and it would be very easy to get bad ideas when examining it. Thinking about this, Wang Yu spoke up to remind him. Didn't I tell you before that the scars on Nan Nan's body will take more than a year to slowly disappear, so there's no point in checking now?
I know, but I'm still a bit worried.
You might as well take another look. It's been a few months, what if there's been some new changes? Su Mu obviously didn't want to let Wang Yu off the hook. Hurry up and send it. I can't not look at it. She's still your best friend, what's this woman thinking, chasing after a guy like this? Brother Yu, just show it to me, don't worry, I won't care.
Nan Nan also sensed Wang Yu's concerns and immediately spoke up to reassure him.
You don't care, but I do. You are a policeman, what if you can't help touching it when you look at it and send me to jail? I absolutely can't agree to this.
No, I'll leave if there's nothing else.
After saying this, Wang Yu was about to leave.
These two people are too dangerous, I'd better go back to my own sweetheart, even though it's a headache, there's no risk. So far, Wang Yu, who has the warm sun Xin and Yuan, although it is easy to lose control of his impulses due to the Xian Yuan Yun Ju, has not pushed open the door to a new world.
His thinking is slightly conservative.
As soon as Wang Yu reached the door, he saw someone push it open.
It was Officer Zhou, Nan Nan's father.
Behind him was a man in military uniform, with a righteous face, a majestic and extraordinary appearance, sword-browed and starry-eyed, dignified and imposing, tall and powerful, looking strong and capable. At first glance, he gave the impression of being upright, standing tall, and a man of blood.
Dr. Wang.
Officer Zhou immediately greeted Wang Yu happily when he saw him. After a few polite words, Officer Zhou seemed to remember something and said to the man behind him.
Ting Jian, this is the divine doctor I told you about, the one who saved your sister. Don't you thank him?
Zhou Tingjian looked at Wang Yu and inexplicably felt a little danger. He had encountered this situation when he was on duty outside.
He trusted his instincts, honed between life and death.
Although the man in front of him was a doctor, he must have powerful strength, otherwise he would not have felt this way.
He watched as his son, after seeing Wang Yu, stared at him intently, and when he told him to say hello, he just stood there.
Officer Zhou smiled awkwardly. His son had basically never returned home since joining the army. A few years ago, he was still able to call and ask about his life. But since joining some mysterious army unit, he has basically been out of contact for 12 months a year. If he doesn't call, he simply can't be reached. When his daughter was injured, she left a message with Zhou Tingjian's unit, but it's been 3 months and he's only just returned. Thinking about this, Officer Zhou became a little angry and was about to scold him, but Wang Yu spoke up.
No need, this is all in the course of things.
Then he remembered that he had not used his blessing today, and the person in front of him was obviously a national sword, so he was sure to be able to gain a lot of merit points. Immediately, a blessing aura enveloped him, and then Wang Yu saw 40,678 merit points appear on the system panel.
Holy shit! He's rich! Could this guy be a reincarnated Arhat?
But when Wang Yu took a closer look, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He had saved more than 60,000 merit points himself. After that round, I thought I had finally broken the 100,000 mark today, but the system clearly shows 20,712 merit points.
This is not right. Could the system be broken?
Although it says guaranteed for 100 years, 1,000-year warranty, there is no contact information.
Even if there was, I wouldn't be able to get in touch.
At this moment, Wang Yu's heart was in a panic, and he immediately began to check.
He quickly discovered the issue. Blessing to gain merit points, 250 points. Blessing to gain merit points, 438 points. Blessing to gain merit points, 521 points. Blessing to gain merit points, 1314 points.
Blessing, deduction, merit points, 40,678 points.
Chapter 131, His Enemy, My Hero. Deducting merit points.
Since the appearance of Han President, who blessed Ziwei, Wang Yu has been very careful every time he blesses someone.
He is afraid of this phenomenon, otherwise he would not only find those righteous people to bless. This Zhou Tingjian appeared in front of Wang Yu with the image of a bloody-minded soldier.
This guy was still thinking that he would make a lot of money from today's blessing, but who would have thought that he would go back to before the liberation and work for more than 2 months for nothing? After figuring out the reason, Wang Yu looked at Zhou Tingjian with a different gaze, full of vigilance. Judging from the character of Dean Han, although he is not a bad person, he definitely cannot be considered a good person. After deducting 3 merit points to figure out the blessing mechanism, Wang Yu now understands. But this guy directly deducted more than 40,000 points, which can be said to be murderous and evil, and he has committed all kinds of evil deeds. In this matter, Wang Yu did not think wrong. Zhou Tingjian really has a lot of lives in his hands. You have to understand that the only thing that matters in a game between soldiers is victory or defeat. There is no such thing as good or evil, they are all serving their own country. Since Zhou Tingjian joined the special forces and ran to other countries on missions, the damage he has caused is not just a little. He is definitely a hero and a good person for his own country. But in the eyes of the other party, he is really a thug who has done nothing but evil. Fortunately, he has only been in the special forces for more than 2 years, otherwise Wang Yu's merit points really aren't enough to deduct. These are things that Wang Yu doesn't know, he just knows that this guy is an extremely dangerous character.
Wang Yu's change immediately aroused Zhou Tingjian's vigilance.
Just now, he only felt danger in Wang Yu, but now he clearly felt hostility. The two men looked at each other, their faces solemn, with the impulse to fight if they disagreed.
Brother Yu, what's wrong with you? Sumu felt the change in the two men and immediately walked over. Nothing.
Sumu's intervention caused a temporary truce between the two men, who were both trying to overwhelm each other with their gazes.
Do you know Tingjian?
No, this is the first time I've seen him. With that, Wang Yu greeted Officer Zhou and left, carefully avoiding Zhou Tingjian as he passed. Having suffered such a great loss,
Wang Yu definitely wasn't going to let it go.
With such a dangerous person appearing in his hospital, he now wanted to find someone to investigate. Sumu watched as Wang Yu left with a solemn expression on his face, and immediately followed him out, catching up after a few quick steps.
Brother Yu, do you have a problem with Tingjian?
Sumu's words made Wang Yu pause, and he thought about asking her about it first.
Walk over to my place, I have something to ask you. With that, he took Sumu's hand and walked quickly.
Sumu, who was still preparing to say something, immediately blushed and shut her mouth as she was dragged along by Wang Yu. When they arrived at the consultation room, Tian Tian was still organizing her materials, so Wang Yu went over and found an excuse to send her away. Tian Tian looked at Sumu with a black face as she blushed and was in the same room as Brother Yu, while she was sent away.
She was very unhappy.
Liar, just now you said you couldn't accept yourself if there was another woman, and now you've turned around and hooked up with Dr. Su.
Men are all big pig's feet.
After closing the door, Tian Tian patted her chest a few times, and then thought about Sumu's bust, and immediately became disheartened.
It was no comparison at all. Could it be that Brother Yu rejected her because of this? The little nurse left in a low mood, and in the room Sumu and Wang Yu had already started talking. Numo, how long have you known that Zhou Tingjian? Wang Yu's character is straightforward, so there was no excessive politeness. I've known him for a long time, since we were kids. He's Nan Nan's younger brother, and he's followed us around since we were kids. Sumu was a little curious. This guy had pulled her over to ask about a man. So, do you know him? I have a feeling that this person is very dangerous.
Of course, Wang Yu couldn't say that he had been taken advantage of for his merit points, but instead, he spoke about his feelings.
Dangerous? I don't feel it at all.
Sumu, who had watched the child grow up since childhood, could sense a sense of danger in him.
So what does he do?
I don't see him in uniform, so he must be a soldier, and he's been one for many years.
Where is he a soldier? I don't know. You know each other well, so how can you not know?
He used to serve in the southwest, but was later transferred to a special unit.
Not to mention me, even Nan Nan and Uncle Joe don't know.
Sumu's words made Wang Yu fall into deep thought. He felt that he had grasped a clue. After thinking for a while, Wang Yu tentatively said that Zhou Tingjian has killed people, and not just one life. Of course, this is all nonsense he made up, just judged by deducting the merit points. Well, this Nan Nan mentioned when she was chatting with me that although Tingjian didn't say what exactly he had done, he also told Nan Nan that he often had to go abroad on missions. As for killing people, he didn't go into detail, but the meaning was conveyed. Having said that, Sumu curiously asked,
how do you know that Ting Jian has killed someone? Isn't this the first time you've met today?
Sumu's words made Wang Yu unable to explain, so he started to bluff. I felt a murderous aura from him, and it was particularly strong, so I asked you to find out more.
If you can feel that, how come I can't? Okay, this depends on personal talent, and obviously you don't have it.
Wang Yu was about to send Sumu away, because this woman had just sat opposite him, and now she was sitting at eye level with him. If they continued chatting for a while, she might just sit in his arms.
Sumu, is that okay? Why don't you go ahead and I'll go look at some data?
She waved the materials in her hands, looking like she was about to get to work. Sumu didn't argue, and since they were both at the hospital, there was plenty of time.
She wasn't in a hurry at all.
She gave Wang Yu a smile and then turned and left.
Wang Yu leaned back in his chair, thinking about Sumu's introduction of Zhou Tingjian. After a while, he figured it out too.
He had obviously misunderstood the situation. Military personnel are external, while police and firefighters are internal. The two types of personnel cannot be compared to each other. He had habitually thought that all military personnel were great heroes, but had forgotten that these people were considered dangerous by other countries, not to mention people like Zhou Tingjian, who always went abroad on missions. Sifu sees cause and effect, and there is no distinction between home and country. In my opinion, Zhou Tingjian did a very good job. But setting aside feelings for one's country, just looking at the destruction he caused, this guy is really a complete thug, a terrorist.
After thinking about it, Wang Yu could only admit that he was unlucky. He couldn't take Sifu back, and even if he wanted to, he couldn't do it.
After a while, Tian Tian came back, holding the medical materials that Wang Yu had just sent her to get. Looking at Wang Yu, who was sitting there with his eyes closed.
Recuperating, Tian Tian couldn't help but throw a little temper tantrum.
She placed the materials on the table heavily, pouting and looking unhappy.
Chapter 132 Sumu's Green Plum.
Hearing the sound, Wang Yu came back to his senses and looked at Tian Tian, who was pouting and looking very unhappy, her eyes red as if she had been crying.
He suddenly had a headache. Why were these women so troublesome? When had he offended her?
In fact, what Wang Yu didn't know was that the Xianyuanyang Ju he cultivated had a natural attraction to women. This kind of change was difficult for people to notice, but it did exist.
Tian Tian, what's wrong? Who made you angry?
Your own little nurse, of course you have to comfort her yourself.
You. Tian Tian angrily accused. Me? Wang Yu really couldn't understand. What's wrong with me? Just now everything was fine.
Liar, you just told me that you couldn't accept other girls, but then you were hanging out with Dr. Su in the hospital holding hands, and just now you even kicked me out. Tian Tian had just gone out for a while and heard the other nurses talking. After all, both Wang Yu and Sumu are celebrities in the hospital, and gossip about them spreads pretty quickly. Tian Tian was unhappy after being told to leave, and after hearing these words, she felt even more sad and felt that Wang Yu didn't value her.
How do you know? Who told you?
Wang Yu thought about how his earlier encounter with Sumu could easily be misunderstood, and immediately had a bad feeling.
The hospital was abuzz with rumors, so what was there to explain? If you don't like me, just say so, why lie to me?
The young nurse was not just sad and upset at this point, but angry.
Tian Tian, Mumu and I really have nothing going on.
We were just having a private conversation, and it wasn't convenient for you to be here.
Mumu. So intimate, what kind of private conversation was it?
Men are stupid when it comes to matters of the heart, and women go with their instincts.
How can I explain it clearly? No. Why do I have to explain? Sumu and I don't have a relationship.
Although she is quite pretty, I really don't have those thoughts.
Okay, girl, don't be angry. I'll treat you to a big meal later, okay? Wen Yu pulled out his trump card.
Every time he treats someone, even if it's just to the cafeteria, the girl is very excited.
This time, she'll be happy to go to a big meal.
No, I've been dieting recently, you go by yourself. Wen Yu said sweetly, looking at the time, almost time to go off duty, and turned around to leave, leaving a somewhat helpless Wen Yu. After simply tidying up the ingredients in his hands, Wen Yu was ready to go to the cafeteria to eat. Just as he walked out of the consultation room, he saw Sumu, Nan Nan, and Zhou Tingjian walking over together.
Brother Yu, let's go eat together. Sumu greeted. Sure, let's go together. Seeing Zhou Tingjian again, Wen Yu was not as wary.
After all, the fault was not in the other person, and after deducting so many merit points, it was obvious that this guy had done well abroad, and it was not in vain that he had paid such a high price to bless him. After observing Wen Yu for a few months, he had already discovered the effect of bestowing blessings. It was really strong. Those who had been blessed by him were comfortable doing whatever they did, and their luck was off the charts. The recent crime-solving rate of Shidu City has increased dramatically, while those criminals are in deep trouble and can't help but curse their bad luck. The four of them, the handsome man and the pretty woman, attracted a lot of attention when they walked together. Wen Yu and Sumu were used to it, but Nan Nan and Zhou Tingjian felt very uncomfortable. Neither of their jobs were suitable for being exposed to other people's stares, which would make them feel very awkward. Numo, let's go out to eat, I've been eating in the hospital cafeteria for months.
Nan Nan said, taking Sumu's hand. Sure, let's go out to eat. I'm really tired of the cafeteria food.
Wen Yu looked at the two women who had decided to change places directly and didn't lose their temper at all.
Although Zhou Tingjian didn't say anything, he was also relieved. After leaving the hospital, they went to a nearby restaurant with good food. After ordering, they just chatted in the private room. Sumu and Nan Nan had a good time chatting with each other, but they didn't pay any attention to the two men.
Zhou Tingjian also didn't take the initiative to talk to anyone, but his gaze drifted to Sumu from time to time, and there was a slight arc at the corner of his mouth. After observing this, Wen Yu felt that this guy was interested in Sumu, and was prepared to rely on him to get rid of Sumu's entanglement. Thinking about the two growing up together since childhood sweethearts, and Zhou Tingjian also growing up in a handsome way, although a little inferior to him, but definitely a handsome guy.
Thinking about this, Wen Yu was ready to take action.
He pulled his chair over to Zhou Tingjian and whispered.
Brother, do you like Mumu?
Zhou Tingjian didn't say anything when he heard Wen Yu's words, but his slightly red face betrayed him.
Brother, listen to me. If you like her, you have to act quickly. The nature of your work is such that if you keep dragging your feet and are afraid to pursue her, by the time you come back next time, Mumu might already be a mother. Wen Yu immediately started stoking the fire.
I heard that Uncle Su has been busy setting up blind dates for Mumu lately, afraid that she won't get married if she turns 30. If you really like her, brother, act quickly. Zhou Tingjian listened to Wen Yu's words and also began to worry. He had forgotten when he had first started to like Sister Mumu, but it had been a long time, anyway. Every time he called, he would ask about Sumu's recent situation, whether he meant to or not.
When he learned that she was still single, he couldn't help but feel excited.
After returning from this mission, he received the news that his sister was seriously injured and dying. At that time, he was terrified. It's been 3 months, and it's possible that his sister has already been reincarnated. He immediately called his father to find out what had happened, and only then did he learn that his sister had been saved by a very skilled doctor. So this guy started to apply for a leave of absence to take all his accumulated leave at once. Normally, this kind of thing would never be approved. But considering Zhou Tingjian's special circumstances, the army gave him 2 months' leave and let him come home. After returning, he didn't even go home, but went straight to the hospital. He felt relieved when he saw his sister talking and laughing with Mumu. After that, he became sullen again. Apart from frequently visiting his sister in the hospital, he took no other action. He wanted to see Sumu, and just waited for her to appear. His sister was the stump he was guarding, hoping every day that Sumu would bump into him. When he saw Wen Yu today, he inexplicably felt danger. At first, he thought the other person had the ability to harm him. But when Mumu chased after him, he realized that this person's harm was not just physical.
As a result, Wen Yu's danger level in his heart increased exponentially.
Originally, he was going to go home for lunch with his father and sister at noon. When he cast his pleading gaze at his sister for the nth time, Nan, who understood her brother's thoughts, immediately sent her father away, and then helped him ask Sumu out to dinner.
Chapter 133, The Girl Crying in the Corner.
Sumu must have agreed to his best friend's invitation, but what the two siblings didn't expect was that as soon as the three of them met, Sumu took them both to invite Wang Yu.
Nan didn't have much to say about inviting his own savior, and Zhou Tingjian had even less to say.
He didn't even dare to speak to the person he liked, let alone expect him to say anything. However, he didn't know what attitude to adopt towards this rival who had saved his sister, and he remained silent the whole way. It wasn't until Wang Yu encouraged him to pursue Sumu that Zhou Tingjian began to think seriously about the matter.
Could it be that he had made a mistake and this guy had no feelings for Sister Mu, otherwise he wouldn't have encouraged him to pursue her?
Thinking this way, Zhou Tingjian's impression of Wang Yu also changed. After all, this guy would never have guessed that his own sister Mu was the one taking the initiative, and Wang Yu was only helping him because he was afraid of being entangled. Thinking about this, Zhou Tingjian no longer remained silent, and with a slightly embarrassed voice, he said,
"Brother Yu, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. It's okay, I felt a connection between us the moment I saw you. Don't worry, I will definitely help you. Leave me your contact information, and we can talk in person some other time."
Wang Yu had finally managed to fool Zhou Tingjian after talking for a long time, and he was in a great mood. In his opinion, Zhou Tingjian had really good conditions, outstanding appearance, outstanding career, and judging from his sister's family background, his family background must also be good. The most important thing is that he grew up with Sumu since childhood, a proper childhood sweetheart.
If he can't win Sumu over, no one else will be able to. After the few had eaten their lunch, Wang Yu bid them farewell. There was still a young nurse at the hospital who was angry, so he took advantage of the lunch break to go back and appease her. Wang Yu's consultation room was a suite, with his own separate lounge, while Tian Tian took a nap in the room where she gave her patients massage treatments. As soon as he opened the door, Wang Yu saw the little nurse lying on the bed, brushing her phone. At first glance, he was attracted by a pair of pink and delicate feet. After a few glances, he cursed himself, feeling that his self-control was getting worse and worse. What he didn't know was that just now, Tian Tian was also secretly looking at him with the corner of her eye. She blushed immediately when she noticed him staring at her feet, and immediately threw her phone away, closed her eyes and pretended to fall asleep. "Tian Tian, I saw it all, don't pretend." Wang Yu went over and pinched the little nurse's nose.
Normally he wouldn't do such intimate things, but today for some reason he just did.
"Humph."
Tian Tian opened Wang Yu's hand, turned around and faced away from him, not saying a word. But the bed was a bit small, Tian Tian's movements were big, and Wang Yu was too close, so inevitably he saw some white and tender skin. He was about to say something, but then he swallowed it back. At this time, Wang Yu really wanted to hug this little nurse into his arms and then, in broad daylight, do something inappropriate, but he could only think about it. The room was very silent at this time, the sound of the girl's breathing was clearly audible, and her perfect curves were even more tempting. At this moment, Wang Yu, whose mind was full of images, could not even organize a sentence to coax someone. He suppressed the rising flames in his heart, quickly turned around and left, slammed the door and ran to his own restroom to gasp for air. Wang Yu felt that his issues were getting more and more serious. He sat on the bed for a long time thinking, but couldn't find a solution.
He didn't go out until the afternoon shift started.
He smiled apologetically when he saw Tian Tian and then got back to work. 5 patients was a piece of cake for Wang Yu, and it didn't take long at all. He finished his work in just over an hour. As he watched the young nurse getting ready to leave, Wang Yu couldn't help but speak up.
"Tian Tian, leaving so early? Dr. Wang, is there anything else? I'm not even going to ask you your name. It's nothing, I was just asking. If there's nothing else, I'll be going."
After saying this, Tian Tian went inside to change her clothes, and left with her bag slung over her shoulder.
Damn it! What's it got to do with me?
One Sumu was eyeing her up, and now this little nurse is giving me trouble too. Thinking about the 3 women in his life, none of whom have ever caused him any trouble, Wang Yu was at his wits' end when faced with an angry Tian Tian. The warm and gentle tolerance of Qianshan, the carefree and uninhibited Xianxian, and the obedient and well-behaved Yuan have always made Wang Yu's relationship with them go smoothly. Today, he rejected Tian Tian and then Sumu, and he thought that would solve the problem, but one of them threw a tantrum and the other didn't even listen. This contrast made Wang Yu feel a headache for a while, and after sitting in the consultation room for a while, he was ready to go back. As she walked out the hospital doors, Wang Yu saw the small figure of Tian Tian crouched on the roadside.
She could faintly hear her crying. She immediately walked over. She thought to herself that she hadn't done anything to her, and she hadn't said anything harsh today. Tian Tian. Wan Yu called softly as she lowered her head. Wah. The girl didn't even lift her head, as if she couldn't hear. Tian Tian. Wan Yu raised her voice, reached out and took Tian Tian by the arm, trying to pull her up. Wah wah wah. The girl reached out and shook her head, then cried even louder. I have personally experienced this. If you don't say anything, you'll just be ignored and made to cry. Apologizing and admitting your fault is completely useless. I wonder if anyone else has had the same experience. Back to the main text. Wan Yu called out twice but got no response, so he had to squat down next to Tian Tian and wait quietly. This place was relatively remote, and there weren't many people coming and going, so it didn't attract any onlookers. After waiting for 5 or 6 minutes, Sweetie's crying slowly turned into a sob. The young girl looked up at Wan Yu beside her and asked hoarsely. Brother Yu, am I a bad woman for confessing my love to you even though I know you have a girlfriend? Even after you rejected me, I still like you, and I even thought not to care about it. Wan Yu looked at the young girl in front of him, who was tearfully wiping her face with her hand. He reached out to help her wipe the tears from her face, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get them all off. Feeling Wan Yu's concern, Tian Tian's body first stiffened, then she immediately hid away, saying loudly, I don't want to like you, you're a big liar, I don't want to like you, but I just can't help but like you. You came over to comfort me at noon, and I wasn't angry anymore, but why did you run away and not speak to me the whole afternoon? Why were you so good to me, why did you save me, why did you help me and my mother, and why did you ignore me? Sweetie then threw herself into Wan Yu's arms, lying on his chest and crying hard. Wan Yu's departure at noon and his silence in the afternoon had caused the little nurse to panic psychologically. Throughout the afternoon, although she did not show it, once they left the hospital, Sweetie could no longer hold back. When her family encountered a major disaster, she was scared, but fortunately Wan Yu had already made all the arrangements for her. Afterwards, when she came to Shiguang Hospital, she worked with him every day, and slowly forgot about these things. And during the days when Wan Yu was on leave, Dean Han didn't say anything, and since Tian Tian was not under the management of the head nurse, no one arranged any new work for her. Chapter 134, Sweetie's Little Scheme. These days, Sweetie has been spending all her time alone in the large consultation room. When she has some free time, she spends it on her phone, and she accidentally came across the clip of Wan Yu giving her artificial respiration online. Although it was covered with a mosaic, she recognized it at once. After all, Tian Hao was wearing a fireman's uniform, and she would never mistake it for anything else. After that, the young nurse started to think about it, and the more she thought about it, the more she filled in the plot. She thought about it like this for many days, and she could no longer tell reality from fiction. After Wan Yu came to work, Tian Tian had been preparing for many days, and she even rehearsed her confession several times. Who knew that Wan Yu would play by no rules, and he came straight out with the big news that he had 3 girlfriends, which completely confused Tian Tian. Although she was rejected later, Tian Tian didn't feel too bad about it. After all, she had thought about this result. However, the appearance of Su Mu and the gossip she heard in the hospital made the young nurse feel bad again, feeling that she had been cheated. At noon, Sweetie was still watching the video of Wan Yu saving her over and over again, and her anger had dissipated a lot. She thought that when Wan Yu came to comfort her again, she would take the opportunity to forgive him. Who knew that this guy just said one sentence when he arrived, and the young girl instinctively rebelled a little and he ran away, and then ignored her the whole afternoon. You have to know that the house Sweetie is living in now, the money spent on it, and the job are all provided by Wan Yu. Although it gives the impression of being supported by someone else, Sweetie knows that Wan Yu was really helping her, and the little nurse has written down every bill and is waiting to pay him back in the future. Wan Yu's behavior throughout the afternoon really scared Sweetie, and she thought that Wan Yu was really angry and would no longer talk to her in the future. Although she really wanted to have backbone and reject Wan Yu's help, she thought about it carefully and realized that Wan Yu hadn't done anything wrong. He has women rejecting him, isn't that what he should expect? Although there are a bit too many women. Even if after rejecting him, he is gossiping with Su Mu, what does that have to do with her? At most, Brother Yu is cheating on Su Mu's feelings. He hasn't cheated on her feelings, so why should she be temperamental with him? Just because she likes him? Does she have to like him back just because she likes him? Is it wrong if she doesn't like him? Sweetie only figured all this out after she left the hospital, and then she couldn't hold back her tears as she cried on the roadside. Before she knew it,
Wang Yu had come over, as usual, to offer his warm regards. This made Sweetie feel even worse, and she cried even harder.
Brother Yu, I'm so miserable, I don't want to talk to you anymore, but you can't ignore me, okay? Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll die.
Sweetie's panic, worry, fear, and timidity made Wang Yu feel very distressed. Although he felt that there was an issue with the logic of Sweetie's statement, he still spoke reassuringly.
Okay, if you don't want to talk to me, I'll talk to you. Brother Yu, why are you so good to me?
The young girl's eyes were full of hope and panic.
Wang Yu thought about it for a while and didn't know how to answer. Some things just go with the flow.
The young nurse had been with him day and night for months, and her innocence, liveliness, and cuteness made it hard for him not to like her.
And this liking, Wang Yu couldn't tell the difference, there was too much involved, a feeling for his sister?
He didn't believe that himself, it was more of a common man's nature, seeing a pretty girl and getting aroused. Wang Yu had long since stopped believing in love, and Chen Yuting's betrayal had made him lose all trust in this regard. He felt more possessive towards Wen Xin and Sun Xian, while towards Yuan, he felt like he owed her too much. As for Tian Tian, Wang Yu could only say that he was really something, he wanted her too, what man could refuse such a pretty girl? But now was not the time to think about this, the little nurse was still crying in his arms. Although this place was remote, their situation had attracted the attention of some people. At that moment, Wang Yu pulled Sweetie up, wiped the tears from her face, and then pinched her rosy cheeks hard and said,
I don't know, I just want to be nice to you.
Okay, go home quickly, and remember to come to work tomorrow. Wang Yu's actions and words made Sweetie lower her head shyly. At that moment, the young girl's thoughts were all on him. Sweetie looked at the man in front of her with a complex gaze when she raised her head again.
I love you so much, I like you so much. Her eyes couldn't help but become a little infatuated.
Even though she knew it was wrong, she just couldn't help it, or rather, she didn't want to hold back.
Brother Yu, can you hug me?
The young girl's voice revealed a kind of pleading in her timidity.
No, hurry home.
Wang Yu held back his urge to heartlessly refuse.
Can the fuck I hug you? Dare I hug you? If I hug you, will nothing happen?
Looking at Wang Yu's evasive gaze, Sweetie, who had originally wanted to give up, noticed a familiar figure right behind Wang Yu.
Provocatively, she kissed him on the cheek and then turned around and ran away quickly. Fuck. Wasn't my rejection obvious enough that she actually dared to kiss me?
Looking at the little nurse running away so quickly, Wang Yu touched the place he was kissed and felt a little disappointed. Since she kissed him, she didn't know how to kiss back.
Wang Yu. Just as he was reminiscing, Su Mu's voice sounded behind him.
As for why she was here, it could only be described as a coincidence. Sweetie and Wang Yu happened to be right below Su Mu's consultation room. After seeing a patient, Su Mu glanced out the window and spotted Wang Yu.
He walked over to the window and took a closer look. Wow! This guy actually had a woman in his arms.
The two were acting really intimately, and it made Su Mu feel a little jealous. He was rejected in the morning, and he thought this guy was a good guy. Now that he thinks about it, he was just thinking too much.
This guy already has 3 women, would he be a good guy?
He is so beautiful and has a great body, but he doesn't want to be paid for it. Now he is actually cuddling with another woman under his window.
This is outrageous.
Before I even arrived at the place, I saw that Wang Yu was actually hugging his little nurse in his arms.
He really is a thief in the night. Next, the little nurse actually kissed Wang Yu in front of her, really showing no respect. Could it be that because she was alone in the room with Wang Yu this morning, she became jealous and then declared her sovereignty in front of me? In
an instant, Su's mind filled in a lot of the plot, and her eyes changed greatly. Wang Yu, who had turned around when she heard her name, looked at Su Mu awkwardly. At this time, no explanation would help. The nurse and I must have been considered by the other party to be having an office romance. This morning, I spoke with conviction and rejected it cleanly.
In the afternoon, I was caught by the other party. If Su Mu didn't know about my 3 girlfriends, this would have been a good way to reject me. But the other party knows, so what do I do now? Say something.
Just as Wang Yu was thinking about how to say it, Su Mu walked over with his long legs.
Chapter 135 When Liang was arrested. What do you want?
Wang Yu couldn't help but yell at the beautiful doctor in front of him.
Scum!
Su Mu's eyes were cold and he stared at the man in front of him.
No, you've misunderstood, it's not what you think.
Wang Yu tried to explain, after all, he really couldn't be blamed for this.
Misunderstood what? I saw you two cuddling on top, what else do you want to say? Seeing Sumu getting angrier and angrier, Wang Yu was a bit at a loss.
Whether or not there was a misunderstanding, it was not her place to accuse herself. Dr. Su, this has nothing to do with you, so there's no need to get so worked up. As he said this, Wang Yu took a few steps back to distance himself from Sumu. Sumu, who was in the middle of an angry tirade, was stunned by the words. When he thought about it, it really had nothing to do with her, but he was so angry.
Dr. Su, is everything okay? Wang Yu looked at the flameout Sumu and was immediately ready to sneak away.
He found that he could not stay in the hospital any longer today, or else he would not know what would happen. Try walking away, and believe it or not, I will tell the women in your family what you just did.
Sumu threatened as she watched Wang Yu leave. Threaten me? Am I Wang Yu afraid of being threatened? Doesn't she know that all her secrets are known to those women? And what Wang Yu hates most is being threatened. He turned back and said indifferently to Sumu. Don't worry, I don't need you to tell me, I'll tell them when I go back. After saying that, he turned around and left, too lazy to care about this beautiful doctor anymore. As she watched Wang Yu's departing back, Sumu felt inexplicably sad. Was she really that bad? Was she so unattractive that no one wanted her? As she thought about it, tears began to flow down her face. She had to remember that this girl had never been in love before. Apart from seeing patients and studying, she rarely interacted with people. She could count the male friends she knew on one hand, one was Nan Nan's younger brother, and the other was Wang Yu. Faced with this situation, she didn't know what to do, and after standing there for a while, she quietly left. Wang Yu, who had walked to the parking lot, let out a deep sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't chase after her, otherwise the issue of whether or not she could go home today would be problematic. Sumu's attraction to him was much stronger than that of Tian Tian. Despite his resolute words, he was actually panicking inside. If he were to be in the same room as Sumu at noon, he would have a hard time keeping his hands off her. After all, cuteness was no match for sexiness. If he really did it, and Sun Young and the Sun brothers found out, he would no longer be able to run his hospital. He might even be directly swept out of the door. After all, Shuguang Hospital has not invested a single dime, and at most, he is just a high-level employee. Even without him, the hospital will still operate as usual. No, I'll set up a meeting with Zhou Tingjin tomorrow and tell him to hurry up, otherwise something will definitely go wrong if we drag this on. As for Tian Tian, Wang Yu didn't know what to do either. He couldn't bring himself to say no. He might as well go back and talk to Wen Xin about it, before it's too late and it's too bad. While Wang Yu was thinking of how to explain it back, Wen Zhong finally found Wen Liang in a small city on the southern coast. Boss, this is the place. A burly man said respectfully to Wen Zhong. Go in and tie the person up for me. Wen Zhong's voice was full of coldness and cruelty. After leaving the detention center, Wen Zhong returned to Kyoto, and after talking to his eldest brother about the Wen group, he took his men straight to Shudu City. He was in such a miserable state because of Wen Liang. If it weren't for this guy coming to see him, his secret would never have been exposed. For this reason, Wen Zhong even fed mosquitoes in the detention center for a few days. Now, the Wen group was the last thing on his mind. He wanted to get rid of Wen Liang as soon as possible. Who knew that by the time he arrived in Shudu City with his men, Wen Liang and Chen Yuting had already left? Looking at the empty villa and unable to find anyone, Wen Zhong could not let it go and immediately started an investigation using his own connections. It was also strange that Wen Liang and Chen Yuting were inexperienced. The two left in a timely manner, but took public transportation. However, Wen Liang had worked as the general manager of the Wen group, and his identity information was no secret at all. Wen Zhong had just sent someone to investigate, and within an hour, a clue was found. He immediately took someone to the city where Wen Liang had settled. At this time, Wen Liang and Chen Yuting had already bought an ice house. After all, housing prices in small cities are cheap, and a house for over 1,000,000 yuan is already very good. After cleaning up in the past few days, the two of them added a lot of furniture. Chen Yuting looked at the home that was slowly filling up, and her obsession gradually faded. She was thinking about bringing her two daughters over as soon as possible so that the family could live a peaceful life. Wen Liang had also found a good project these past few days, and was just waiting for it to settle down before he could get started. Neither of them noticed the danger approaching. When they went out to eat this afternoon, they were discovered by someone sent by Wen Zhong. Wen Zhong, who had received the news, immediately took a plane from Kyoto and hurried over. He was prepared to go and deal with Wen Liang himself.
The incident in Sudu was nothing but a great humiliation to him. Wen Liang was the culprit, so how could Wen Zhong let him go so easily? At this time, Wen Zhong stood in the doorway, waiting for his men to control Wen Liang before going in. He vowed to torture Wen Liang properly, otherwise it would be hard to quell the hatred in his heart. The sound of Wen Liang's rebuke and Chen Yuting's screams came from the room, but soon subsided. After 2 minutes, a subordinate walked out and said to Wen Zhong, "Boss, it's okay." Wen Zhong heard this and stubbed out his cigarette, his eyes full of ferocity as he walked in. At this time in the living room, Wen Liang was tied up with his hands and feet curled up on the ground, with a piece of hemp rope tightly tied around his mouth. Chen Yuting had her hair loose and was tied to a chair. Seeing Wen Zhong's arrival, Wen Liang couldn't help but struggle violently, while Chen Yuting was very scared. After entering, Wen Zhong kicked Wen Liang furiously until he was too weak to move, and then signaled one of his subordinates to go over and check. By this time, Wen Liang had already lost consciousness, and blood was oozing from his mouth and nose. Chen Yuting's eyes were about to burst from anger, but she was trapped so tightly that she could only make some useless struggles, unable to do anything at all. She now deeply regretted provoking Wen Zhong, and never imagined that her momentary impulse would bring such serious consequences to them. But there was no use in regretting it now. The only thing she was grateful for was that she and Wen Liang's child had not yet been brought here, otherwise the consequences would have been even more serious. "Boss, it's just a flesh wound, it's fine." After checking Wen Liang's body, the subordinate gave him another injection, obviously having a wealth of medical experience. Immediately afterwards, a basin of cold water was poured over Wen Liang's head, and 2 big men picked him up. Wen Zhong sat on the couple's newly bought sofa, indicating that the rope around Wen Liang's mouth should be untied. Chapter 136, Chen Yuting regrets it too late. As he watched Wen Liang gradually come to his senses, Wen Zhong went up and gave him 2 big slaps in the face, causing Wen Liang's mouth to start bleeding again. Then he wiped his hands on his clothes, lit a cigarette and said, "Liang, you made your uncle look for you. Do you know that these past few days, your uncle couldn't think of anything but you?" Hearing Wen Zhong's words, Wen Liang's eyes gradually turned red. This person in front of him had never had much contact, and he had never had the opportunity to get to know him before. However, that incident last time left a deep psychological shadow on him. The main reason why he and Chen Yuting were able to leave Shudu City so quickly was that they were afraid of Wen Zhong's retaliation. When they first arrived, they were still worried and afraid, and they were careful in everything they did. But they didn't expect Wen Zhong to come looking for them in less than a month. At this time, Wen Liang was also in a daze. A moment ago, a group of strong men barged in, and with his current skills, he was no match. He was overpowered in less than 30 seconds, and he couldn't help but doubt whether Taekwondo was useless. Reluctantly, he looked back at Chen Yuting and found that she was not hurt, except for being tied up. Wen Liang couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief, and despite the pain in his body, he asked, "What do you want?" "We have already left Shudu City and will no longer interfere with the One Group's affairs, so why are you still after us?" No, there are some things that you cannot avoid doing just because you don't want to. Liang, I'm giving you a chance. The consequences are something you can't afford to worry about." Wen Zhong didn't put in so much effort just to take revenge on Wen Liang. He had other motives as well. Wen Liang had worked for the Wen Group for so many years, and later became the general manager of the group. Even if he was removed by Wen Xin now, if he helped, the success rate of his brother's plan to seize their cousin's property would undoubtedly increase a lot. "You can forget about me dealing with my mother." Wen Liang said this and then shut up, and then simply closed his eyes. Wen Zhong saw this and didn't care, this was just the beginning. He immediately waved his hand and the 2 big men dragged Chen Yuting into the bedroom next door. Hearing Chen Yuting's cries for help, Wen Liang immediately struggled to his feet and shouted, "Wen Zhong, if you're capable, come at me, what are you capable of bullying a woman for?" Wen Zhong couldn't help but smile when he saw Wen Liang care so much about Chen Yuting. He walked over, slapped him in the face, and then kicked him to the ground. "Do you know that if you hadn't come that day, your woman would be lying in my bed?" He said this and stamped on Wen Liang's face with his foot. Watching him struggle helplessly, Wen Zhong felt a great sense of satisfaction. "Don't worry, Wen Zhong, am not so tasteless as to bully a woman, and she has never caused me any harm. But if your woman is willing to let me sleep with her, it's hard for an uncle to refuse." Wen Zhong then went to the room where Chen Yuting was, and soon the 2 big men walked out from inside and stood guard at the door. When he came into the room, Wen Zhong looked at Chen Yuting, who was thrown on the bed, and although she was in a sorry state, she was even more enticing. Wen Zhong walked over, helped Chen Yuting loosen the ropes, pinched her pale pretty face with his hand, looked at it carefully for a while, and said with slight admiration,
Miss Chen, do you want to follow me in the future?
I don't care how many people you've slept with before, as long as you let me sleep alone in the future, I promise you'll live very well.
In Wen Zhong's opinion, this woman would not refuse him.
After all, she had followed him into the hotel at the time, and supporting Chen Yuting was just a side effect.
Now it was just a way to put a little pressure on Wen Liang. I'll sleep with you, can you let Wen Liang go? Chen Yuting was surprisingly calm.
Instead of making a scene after being let go, she calmly negotiated with Wen Zhong.
No, at most you can be a kept lover.
Chen Yuting has no value to Wen Zhong at all. In other words, her body is only worth a little money to him, not comparable to Wen Liang, the former general manager of the Wen Group. Wen Zhong's words made Chen Yuting feel sad, her eyes filled with despair.
When had she become so worthless?
She had even thought about trading the rest of her life for Wen Liang's freedom, but it turned out that in other people's eyes, she wasn't even worthy of that. Recalling her experiences in the first half of her life, Chen Yuting felt that this was her retribution. If she had waited for Wen Liang at the beginning, she would have been doing well now. Later, after marrying Wang Yu, if she had chosen to live an honest life, she would not have been so greedy when Wen Liang appeared, and she would have rejected him directly, and she would not have ended up without a home. Then she thought about a month ago, it was her own greed and unwillingness that attracted Wen Zhong, which led to Wen Liang being coerced at the moment. Everything was caused by herself, and at the moment, Chen Yuting could no longer be described as regretting it. She hated herself so much that she wanted to strangle herself. If it wasn't for her concern for Wen Liang and her 2 children, she would have killed herself at that moment. After thinking about her children and Wen Liang, Chen Yuting's dead eyes regained some luster. She got off the bed and knelt in front of Wen Zhong and begged him. Please let Wen Liang go, I'll do whatever you want, I don't want your money, I don't want to be your mistress, as long as you let Wen Liang go, I'll be your dog. As she spoke, Chen Yuting broke down and cried, then began to kowtow to Wen Zhong. The force was so great that blood flowed from her head after a few blows.
Wen Zhong looked at the obviously mentally unstable woman in front of him and felt instantly bored.
He called his men and had her tied up again.
Wen Liang was then dragged into the bedroom.
Looking at Chen Yuting, who had been thrown on the ground, tears fell from Wen Liang's eyes in big drops. He heard what Chen Yuting had just said clearly, and he never expected her to go to such lengths for him.
Wen Liang squirmed on the ground towards Chen Yuting, trying to get in front of her. Wen Zhong just watched quietly until Wen Liang and Chen Yuting were leaning closely against each other. Liang, I'll ask you once more, are you really not going to help me? Hearing Wen Zhong's words, Wen Liang didn't answer but instead asked Chen Yuting. Do you blame me, senior? No, I don't. I'll listen to you from now on.
Chen Yuting leaned her head against Wen Liang's chest. Her tone was gentle, but it revealed a firm resolve. Wen Liang heard the words of his beloved and a great courage rose in his heart. He looked at Wen Zhong and said with a carefree air. Wen Zhong, I won't deal with my mother, and you can't threaten me with Yuting. Besides, neither of us is afraid of death, so if you're capable, go ahead and kill us. Wen Zhong gave a faint smile when he heard Wen Liang's words, walked over to him and said gently.
Ah Liang, what are you thinking? How could I possibly do something illegal?
Although my cousin doesn't recognize you, my uncle still does.
Chapter 137, Stop saying Wen Liang isn't miserable enough.
After Wen Zhong finished speaking, he turned to the subordinate who had just helped Wen Liang examine his body and asked.
Fourth, you just said that my nephew had minor injuries, right?
Yes, boss. Although it looks serious, it is all superficial injuries, and it has not caused any disabilities. Anyone who comes to evaluate it will also say that it is minor. Wen Zhong nodded and then said, then the 2 men who just started the fight, step forward. Immediately, the 2 men took 2 steps forward, called out to Wen Zhong, boss, and indicated that they were the ones who started the fight. Wen Zhong nodded with satisfaction, completely forgetting about the fierce kicks he had just delivered, and said to the 2 men. If my nephew calls the police, you will go to jail, but as the boss, I can't treat you badly.
How about 5 million a year? The 2 men immediately said excitedly, thank you, boss. They looked at Wen Liang with different eyes right away. They knew that a minor injury usually only resulted in 2 to 3 years in prison, but if they really went to jail, they would get more than 10 million yuan when they got out. They now really hoped that Wen Liang would go out and report the case, giving them a chance to make money. After Wen Zhong finished questioning him, he squatted in front of Wen Liang and said, Liang, when my uncle is not busy, he likes to listen to someone called Zhang San explain the law on the internet.
He mentioned a case at the time that I have always been very interested in, and now I want to try to see if what he said is true. Wen Liang ignored Wen Zhong and just stared at him fiercely. With the support of Chen Yuting, he was not afraid of death, let alone the bullshit case Wen Zhong was talking about. Zhang San broke into a house, resisted arrest violently and was arrested. According to the law, he would be sentenced to 10 years in prison.
Do you know how he defended himself?
Wen Zhong simply sat cross-legged on the ground, lit a cigarette and put it in Wen Liang's mouth. He lit one for himself as well, took a slow drag and continued.
I want to know the third one. Is Zhang San right? Knife. Lao Si. I heard that you two are very interested in men. I wonder if you can be Zhang San for once. Insist on 1 hour for 10 million, 2 hours for 20 million, and so on. There is no upper limit.
Wen Zhong then signaled for the mouths of Chen Yuting and Wen Liang to be gagged. Wen Liang, who was defiant and not afraid of death, stared with wide eyes and struggled violently after hearing Wen Zhong's words. Chen Yuting also began to recklessly slam against the man pulling her. The two of them never would have imagined that Wen Zhong would use this method. At this moment, if looks could kill, Wen Zhong would have been killed countless times already.
But obviously it was of no use.
Wen Zhong took out his phone and handed it to his subordinate, saying, "Keep that woman watching, and don't hold back unless he agrees to help me take over the Wen group." After saying this, Wen Zhong went to the bedroom next door to rest. He had been very tired after the long journey from Kyoto, and this was a good time to rest. With Wen Zhong's departure, the door to this house closed, and no one knew what was happening inside. It wasn't until after 7 o'clock in the evening that Wen Zhong, who had been asleep, left with his men. As he left, he cursed at the knife and the fourth man, saying, "Damn it, how much medicine did you guys take to make 40 million from your father?" However, there was a burst of laughter from the men in the corridor. It wasn't until Wen Zhong had left for more than half an hour that Chen Yuting slowly woke up from her coma. She had just watched Wen Liang being tortured in turn, and she had not held on for long before she fainted from anger. She was woken up twice by someone splashing water on her, but she fainted again after a short while. The man holding her let her go when he saw this situation, and simply left her on the ground. When Chen Yuting woke up, she immediately looked at the bed. There were bloodstains all over the quilt and sheets. Wen Liang was lying on top of them, his eyes blank and staring at the ceiling, as if his soul had been extracted. The ropes that had bound the two of them had been untied when they left, and Chen Yuting immediately pounced, hugging Wen Liang and crying her heart out.
She didn't know how to comfort Wen Liang. No amount of comfort would help in a situation like this. At that moment, Chen Yuting only felt a great sense of terror enveloping the two of them. She was afraid, she was really afraid. Now she was so afraid of losing the man in her arms that she cried until her tears dried up, hugging Wen Liang, who looked like a corpse, until she could no longer make a sound in her throat. But Wen Liang's eyes still did not have a sparkle in them. Having been witnessed by the woman he loved most as he was being assaulted, Wen Liang, who had suffered a huge blow to his body and soul, had become a living dead man. No matter how Chen Yuting shook him or screamed, he didn't respond at all. Now he didn't speak, didn't look anywhere on his own initiative, like a walking corpse. It was past midnight when Chen Yuting brought a basin of warm water and helped Wen Liang clean the blood off his body. She was choking with sobs as she wiped him down. Now she didn't even have the thought of suicide in her mind, fearing that after she died, a man like Wen Liang simply wouldn't be able to go on living. The only thing supporting Chen Yuting was the fact that Wen Liang in front of her was still breathing and there was hope that he would regain consciousness. It was her own greed that had harmed him. Harmed a man who loved her so much. Greedy people are always destroyed by their own greed. Chen Yuting had already realized this at this point, but unfortunately there was no medicine for regret in the world. Even if she cried bitterly and regretted, what was the use? At this point, Chen Yuting's obsession was to take care of Wen Liang and make sure that he picked himself up again. Unfortunately, this time Wen Liang not only suffered physical injuries, but also suffered more mental damage. No one can guarantee when he will recover.
Wang Yu, who was far away in Shuzhou City, was hugging Wen Xin and sleeping soundly.
After returning in the afternoon, he told Wen Xin about what happened between him and Tian Tian today. He originally thought that this woman would scold him. Who would have thought that he would get her support, and she even sent a video to Sun Qianyuwen to convey the matter, and they both supported it. Sun Qian decided on the spot that she would go to the hospital herself tomorrow to help. Wang Yu get things sorted out with Tian Tian, but Wang Yu refused directly, fearing that Sun Qian would scare Tian Tian if she went over there. He decided to wait until tomorrow when he went to work and talk to Tian Tian first.
He also had to hurry and find a way to help Zhou Tingjian get things sorted out with Su Mu. He didn't tell the three women about this, but if he delayed too long, it would also be a big problem. When Hong and Wen Jia returned to Tiannan City after living at Wen Xian's place for a while, Wen Xian had arranged for them to intern at the company. When Liang had left, and after they graduated, they would both be joining the Wen group, so it was a good idea for them to spend their remaining vacation time familiarizing themselves with the business at the company. Although Wen Wan's health had recovered well for now, she still needed careful care. Staying at Wen Xian's place, with Wang Yu by her side, they would be able to detect any problems as soon as they arose.
Chapter 138, Sweetie, come to the bowl. Wang Yu couldn't wait to rush to the hospital after breakfast in the morning. His woman was waiting for him at the station, so what was there to be afraid of? It was a journey full of sparks and lightning, with countless overtaking maneuvers. It took more than half an hour for Wang Yu to arrive at his clinic. After pushing open the door and going inside, he noticed that the little nurse wasn't there today, which made him feel a bit disheartened. The excitement he had felt since last night was gone, so he idly called Zhou Tingjian. The sweet issue was resolved. After talking it over later, whether the nurse agreed or disagreed was not something he could decide. After all, the choice was already in her hands. The rest was Su Mu. For her, Wang Yu felt that it was better to stay away from her. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but he was afraid. You have to know that this beautiful doctor has a big appetite and wants to be exclusive. This kind of thing is not something Wang Yu would agree to, and neither would a normal man, so it's better to get rid of her as soon as possible, before Sundishing hears the bad gossip spreading around the hospital in a few days. Zhou Tingjian answered the phone quickly, and Wang Yu and he talked for a long time on the phone, analyzing Su Mu's likes and habits in detail. Then Wang Yu searched online for a master class tutorial and started to instill Zhou Tingjian with it, so that he, who was still a love novice, just wanted to say that it made sense when he listened. Wang Yu didn't hang up the phone until after Tian Tian came to work, telling Zhou Tingjian to take action quickly in the next few days and start sending the first bouquet of flowers this afternoon. The method may be old-fashioned, but it will never go out of style, otherwise florists would have gone out of business long ago. Just look at the 2 days of 2.14 in Shishi every year, when even the square is full of flower sellers, and you'll know that sending flowers to a woman is definitely a good way to go. Tian Tian's mood seemed to have eased up a lot today.
Although she wasn't as lively as she used to be, she gave Wang Yu a smile when she arrived. As he watched the little nurse go inside to change, Wang Yu had the urge to rush in and help. After all, he was on a mission to woo the girl today, and his courage must have grown. But he just thought about it. He didn't know the young girl's choice yet, and he couldn't take advantage of someone just because they liked him. After a while, the little nurse came out after changing, and started tidying up the consultation room, checking the things she needed for the day, and the materials for treating patients in the afternoon. Wang Yu sat there pretending to read a book, but in fact his eyes were following the busy figure of Tian Tian. When the little nurse picked up the broom and was about to sweep the floor, Wang Yu couldn't help but speak up.
Tian Tian, I've never seen you so diligent before, what's wrong today?
Nothing, I just want to work hard. Tian Tian blushed and said, usually after she arrives at the clinic, she first chats with Wang Yu for a while, then idles around for a while, and it's only after 10 o'clock that she prepares the things she needs for the afternoon. As for cleaning, the hospital has a dedicated cleaning department, and she never does it. After arriving today, Tian Tian didn't know how to face Wang Yu, and her mind kept racing, so she found work to do on her own.
It's okay, come over. Brother Yu has something to say to you. Wang Yu waved at Tian Tian. What's he saying? I don't have to go over there, I can hear it here. Tian Tian felt that Wang Yu was a bit dangerous today, and instinctively wanted to stay away from him. But Wang Yu, who had made up his mind, would not let her go easily. Although he said that he respected Sweetie's choice, he knew what was in his heart. He was going to take the initiative, and Sweetie was his current target. Standing up from his chair, Wang Yu walked towards Sweetie step by step. The little nurse instinctively backed up, and after a few steps, she was forced by Wang Yu to the wall. Then Wang Yu's arm reached out, and Tian Tian nervously closed her eyes. Having watched a lot of Korean dramas, she thought Wang Yu was going to wall press her. Thinking about whether he was going to kiss her, she wondered if she should cooperate or resist while cooperating. Tian Tian, who was filling in the plot, didn't see that Wang Yu's hand wasn't reaching out to wall press her, but to lock the office door. The plot on TV is moving too slowly. Don't you know it's a fast-paced life now?
After you're done wall diving, say some bullshit, then go up and kiss, and the episode will be over. After locking the door, Wang Yu slowly reached out a hand and wrapped it around Sweetie's slender waist. Then he brought her into his arms, and the young nurse's soft body pressed against his chest. A breathtaking aura of femininity made Wang Yu's heart tremble, and Sweetie, who had her eyes closed, was startled at this time. Yu, who was usually gentle, had acted so directly. He hadn't even asked if she was willing, and he hadn't said any sweet nothings, so why had he just done it? For a moment, the young nurse was at a loss for what to do, and could only let Wang Yu hold her as he walked her to the desk. Wang Yu sat back down in his chair, and the difference was that there was a cute little nurse sitting next to him.
Can we have a good chat?
Wang Yu said something serious while feeling around the young nurse's waist.
Chat? About what?
At this time, Tian Tian's mind went blank, and she didn't know why she inexplicably found herself sitting in Brother Yu's lap.
Let's talk about the two of us.
Wang Yu wanted to take advantage of the fact that the little nurse's mind wasn't working properly at the moment to take her.
What about the two of us? Tian Tian looked confused. Didn't she reject her yesterday? What else is there to talk about? Don't you like me and want to be with me?
Wang Yu got straight to the point, and what he said was very tasteless.
He didn't even know to change the wording.
It was him who liked her and wanted to be with her.
I like you, but I don't want to be with you.
One plan didn't work, so he came up with another, and Wang Yu's face started to get closer.
No, Brother Yu, your girlfriends will be angry.
At this time, Tian Tian completely woke up, and she used her soft little hands to reject Wang Yu's approach, but obviously it was useless.
They agreed, but I haven't agreed yet.
Tian Tian's prepared words were swallowed back down, and the strong stimulation made her feel dizzy again. Tian Tian only felt that Brother Yu's face was too close to her, so close that she could not see anything clearly, and she only felt that she could no longer speak. The feeling of being electrocuted made Tian Tian, who had just fallen in love, simply unable to understand her own state at the moment.
Chapter 139. Zhou Tingjian began to take action.
It was not until 10 minutes later that Tian Tian, whose head was empty, suddenly came back to her senses and immediately stood up from beside Wang Yu. The young nurse was panting, and she didn't dare to look at Wang Yu as she ran into the restroom. It was half an hour before she finally calmed down a little, but her heart was still in turmoil. She hadn't been able to figure out how to deal with her relationship with Wang Yu since yesterday. She wanted to give up, but she didn't want to, and if she didn't give up, she would face a lot of social pressure. At this moment, Wang Yu had taken such a big advantage, and she didn't know what to do. She was even more afraid to go out and face Wang Yu. In case this guy does something even more outrageous, Tian Tian is afraid that she simply won't be able to refuse.
She is now hiding like an ostrich, staying as long as she can.
But she has forgotten that the guy outside simply won't give her much time. Pushing open the door to the lounge, Wang Yu can't help but sigh as he looks at Tian Tian, who is trembling slightly. Walking over to sit next to her, he pats her on the shoulder and says gently,
"Don't think too much. If there's something you can't figure out, just leave it alone. I'll help you sort it all out. Brother Yu, I don't know anything, I don't know what to do, I don't know if this is right, and I don't know what will happen in the future, so please don't bully me anymore." Tian Tian told Wang Yu her most honest thoughts, and her soft and weak appearance was even more pitiable. "It's okay if you don't know, just remember that I will be responsible for you, and don't worry about anything else." The two of them just sat there for a while, and Tian Tian calmed down a bit. She looked seriously at Wang Yu's handsome face and reached out her little hand to stroke it. "Okay, let's go out, we still have work to do. I'll take you back for dinner tonight." With that, he took Sweetie's hand and walked out of the lounge. After returning to the consultation room, Wang Yu let go of the young nurse and began to study the medical materials in earnest. The young nurse obviously had no desire to work at the moment, sitting in her chair, lost in thought. The two of them tacitly refrained from speaking, as they needed some time to digest what had just happened. At this time, Sumu, who was seeing a patient, looked at Zhou Tingjian standing in front of her with a bouquet of roses in his hands, and for a moment, she felt a little headache. She knew that this younger brother of her best friend had liked her since she was young, but she had never taken it seriously. After all, the two of them had a bit of an age difference and didn't go to the same school. Later, when Zhou Tingjian went to the army, they saw each other even less, and although this little brother liked her, he never said anything, so Sumu pretended not to know. But today, this guy, it seems, has suddenly come to his senses, and he actually rushed to where she works with flowers in his hands. Sumu, who was still thinking about how to win over Wang Yu, didn't know what to do now. She had already said no, but it obviously didn't work. She didn't know when his face had become so thick. She had been talking for a long time, but he didn't say a word, just standing there blushing.
Even Sumu's high IQ was at a loss for how to resolve this situation. He had just called Nan Nan to come over and take the person away, but she was rejected by the other party and told to take care of it herself.
Should he notify Uncle Zhou to come and take his son?
Sumu shook his head at the thought.
It was better to just let the young people sort it out on their own.
Zhou Tingjian, you can leave the flowers here, I still have things to do, if you're free, you can go back first. Sumu felt that it would be better to get rid of Zhou Tingjian first, and then talk to him clearly at noon. Zhou Tingjian was very grateful to Wang Yu when he heard that Sumu had accepted his flowers. He never imagined that the idea this guy gave him would be so useful.
What should he do next?
After thinking for a while, Zhou Tingjian remembered that after a girl accepts flowers, the next step is to go on a date. They can go out to eat, go to the movies, go shopping, there are many places to go, and it depends on the girl's interests where to go exactly. Thinking that Sumu has loved learning and reading since she was a child, Zhou Tingjian felt that asking Sumu to go to the library was most appropriate.
He immediately said,
Sister Mumu, after you finish work, let's go to the library and read together.
Sumu was confused when she heard Zhou Tingjian's words. She really wanted to ask him if he was serious. There was only a short time at noon, and after eating, without taking a break, running to the library to read for half an hour and then returning to work, was he sick? Besides, the library doesn't have as many medical books as the hospital, and I wouldn't go to the library if I wanted to read. Tingjian, forget the library, let's have lunch together at noon, I have something to tell you. As he spoke, he waved his hand to indicate that he should leave. Seeing that Sumu had accepted his invitation, Zhou Tingjian was very happy. Although they weren't going to the library as he had suggested, they could still go for lunch. Immediately, Zhou Tingjian put down the flowers and turned around to leave. He walked with a confident stride, not at all the nervous and shy person he had been a moment ago. Sumu pressed his temples for a moment, feeling a bit of a headache.
He was courting Wang Yu, and Zhou Tingjian was courting him. It was so confusing and troublesome. After thinking for a while, he continued to work on his next patient. If he didn't work, he wouldn't be able to finish his morning tasks. Not everyone could see a patient as quickly as Wang Yu. After Zhou Tingjian left, he called Wang Yu and told him what had happened. When Wang Yu heard that Zhou Tingjian had actually asked someone to go to the library to read in the middle of the day, he was instantly amazed. What kind of brain could think of going to such a place? You have to lower your voice even to speak in a library, and there are a lot of people inside, so what kind of relationship can you talk about on a date there? At that moment, he carefully explained to Zhou Tingjian the advantages and disadvantages of many places, and told him to look up some information online in his spare time to improve his knowledge of pursuing girls. The two of them talked for more than 10 minutes before ending the call.
Tian Tian, who was listening clearly, was burning with curiosity. Brother Yu, which handsome guy is pursuing Dr. Su? Is he from our hospital?
No, he grew up with Su Muqing.
He came over yesterday, but you left before you saw him.
As he said this, Wang Yu wanted to reach out and touch the little nurse's head.
Chapter 140, Don't try to read a girl's mind. Seeing Wang Yu's outstretched hand, Tian Tian was startled and immediately ran away. She was still feeling guilty about what
had just happened.
Moreover, the door to the consultation room was still open.
If Wang Yu caught her again and bullied her, she didn't know how she would face people.
Brother Yu, please, wait until after work, and I'll let you bully me, okay? What are you thinking? How could I bully you? Take back your hand.
Wang Yu said helplessly. Did he really scare the little nurse?
Liar.
Wang Yu's words had no persuasiveness at all, and Tian Tian simply didn't believe him. Looking at Tian Tian, who was hiding far away, Wang Yu was also a bit speechless.
When had he become so easily disbelieved? Brother Yu, tell me, what exactly happened between Dr. Su and her childhood sweetheart? After Tian Tian ran away, she continued to ask about the gossip.
Wang Yu gave a small smile and then told Sweetie everything that had happened yesterday, and also told her what he had been thinking.
The little nurse found it very interesting and couldn't help but ask.
So this Zhou Tingjian has now started wooing Dr. Su, and the idea came from you, Brother Yu, right?
Yes. Brother Yu came up with this plan to get rid of Dr. Su's pestering? Yes. Dr. Su is so pretty and has such a great figure, why don't you like her, Brother Yu? Women's concerns have always been different from men's, and Wang Yu, the problem-obsessed sweetie, didn't know how to answer. To be honest, did he really not want to eat up a beautiful doctor like Su Mu who came to him? It wasn't that he didn't want to, it was that he couldn't.
Sometimes it was troublesome to provoke a woman you shouldn't, and Sumu was not like Sweetie. As long as he didn't start a fire in his own backyard, and Sweetie was willing, it wouldn't cause any problems at all.
Even if the Sun brothers knew, they wouldn't say anything.
After all, their own asses aren't clean either, and Sun Qian has also expressed her support, which will not affect Wang Yu's life at all.
But Sumu is different. Suning is an old fox, and he only has one daughter.
If he knew that he was having an ambiguous relationship with his precious daughter, it might cause a big problem. This matter cannot be explained away by saying that Wang Yu and Sumu are willing partners.
Sweetie, there are many beautiful women, and I can't fall in love with everyone I meet. Don't think too much about it.
Wang Yu thought for a while and explained. Oh, brother Yu is right, but I still feel that Dr. Su is so beautiful, and you must be moved, brother Yu. Sweetie definitely agreed with Wang Yu, but she still believed in her own intuition.
Okay, let's not talk about this anymore.
You still have to help me think of a way to help Zhou Tingjian pursue Sumu.
Wang Yu didn't want to talk about himself and Sumu anymore. I don't know either. I've never been in love before.
Tian Tian was just a bit nosy, but she couldn't think of a good idea either. The two of them chatted away, and before long it was time to eat. Wang Yu took Tian Tian to the cafeteria with him, and the two of them seemed to have returned to the past. The little nurse chattered away happily the whole way, and Wang Yu followed behind her with a smile. At this time, Sumu, who had finished work, had already arrived at a restaurant with a very atmospheric feeling with Zhou Tingjian. After ordering a set meal, Sumu began to eat, and when Zhou Tingjian saw that Sumu was not speaking, he didn't know what to say either, so he also began to eat. When they had almost finished eating, Sumu had almost organized what she wanted to say, and she put down her chopsticks and said to Zhou Tingjian, Tingjian, I know that you have liked me for a long time, and I also know your feelings for me.
I have also considered our relationship before.
Sumu paused here. After all, the next words were a bit hurtful, and she was thinking of how to say it more tactfully.
Zhou Tingjian didn't feel anything when he heard Sumu's words.
After all, the fact that he liked Sumu had long been interrogated by his sister. Given their relationship, it was normal to know this, so he looked up at Sumu and waited for her next words. Zhou Tingjian, after thinking about it before, I knew that I would never fall in love with you, I just see you as a brother from the neighborhood.
Now I want to tell you the same thing, so you'd better not waste your time on me.
Sumu's words were a bit direct, because she didn't know how to express it tactfully, so she simply said what she was thinking. Hearing Sumu's words, Zhou Tingjian was a bit disappointed, but not frustrated, because Wang Yu had already told him how to deal with these reactions from Sumu in the morning.
You can't give up on a girl just because she rejects you once. You have to keep going. If you give up now, you won't have a chance. You have to be persistent. What if she agrees next time? And the next time? And the next time? As long as you don't give up, you'll have a chance. Zhou Tingjian felt that Wang Yu was right and was prepared for a long battle. His military career had made him very patient. Sister Mumu, I know that we are too familiar with each other, so you don't feel anything for me, but that's okay. I just want to pursue you, I'm not looking for your immediate consent. But I believe that if we spend more time together, you will also like me. Who gave you the confidence that I would like you? When did Zhou Tingjian become so thick-skinned? I refused so obviously, and there was no reaction at all?
Tingjian, really don't waste your time on me, or I'll introduce you to a girl. Thinking about this, Sumu immediately had the right candidate in mind. She wanted to introduce the little nurse by Wang Yu's side to Zhou Tingjian. If it really worked out, it would be killing two birds with one stone. She would be able to get rid of Zhou Tingjian's harassment, and Zhou Tingjian would be able to find a girlfriend. As for whether it would work out in the future, it didn't matter, the key was that she could be relieved. Moreover, if that little nurse is courted by Zhou Tingjian, Wang Yu will not be able to take advantage of the situation, and his own chances will greatly increase. In this way, he can quickly win over Wang Yu, and then find a way to take Wang Yu away from those women, so that he can be with him in the future. Thinking about it this way, Sumu felt that this was a good idea, and immediately began to introduce Tian Tian to Zhou Tingjian. He praised Tian Tian as being rare in the sky and unparalleled on earth, completely forgetting how Tian Tian had provoked her yesterday.
Zhou Tingjian now only felt inexplicable.
He was pursuing Sister Mumu, but instead she was introducing girlfriends to him. And the more she talked, the more enthusiastic she became.
This one you never mentioned this to me, what should I do, what should I do?
The two of them talked in the restaurant for more than an hour, until Sumu was about to go to work, and they let go of Zhou Tingjian, who was at a loss. After walking out of the restaurant and seeing Sumu leave, this guy immediately reported the situation to Wang Yu and asked what to do next.